from Wilbraham Public Access is recording this meeting. Is there anyone else here recording? We will do roll call in alphabetical order. Bill Bontempi.
Here.
Cheryl Caruana. Here. Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Lisa Murray.
Here.
Rich Whitaker. Mike Tirabassi.
Here.
Michelle Boudreau. Here. If you would please,
Rich Rediker is here, just walking in.
if you would please stand for the pledge of allegiance, Mike will be leading us.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are going to begin with our student rep update. Do we have a student rep this evening? Okay, so no student rep this evening. So we will continue with old business. So we will begin with the discussion of the school bus fire. So I would like to invite Mr. Alvin Morton to the table. And he is the director for the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative. Thank you for being here tonight. John.
So after our last school committee meeting, I reached out to Executive Director Morton to share some of the concerns that were expressed that night. And we had, as you know, a family community meeting last week at which Executive Director Morton was present and heard from some families directly concerns about the fire. So I've asked him to be here tonight to address things that came up either at the last school committee meeting or came up at our meeting last week. And with that, I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you. It's unfortunate I'm here for this reason, to see you all again. And I guess first and foremost, I want to extend an apology to the families, the students, and the school district again for having to go through something like this matter, a bus fire. It's nothing that I've experienced in over 20-some years of education. It's an unfortunate situation, but it did happen, and we just want to make sure it doesn't transpire again. So one of the things we've been looking at, and as I told the families that night, we do have annual reviews of our buses on a regular basis. It's 4 times a year, three times by the RMV Bus Inspectors Unit. That usually happens in December, January, April, May, August, and September. And then you also have a 4th one where it actually goes out to a RMV authorized bus inspection station like your vehicle would go to. And that's done at Northeast Automotive, which is on Boston Road, Wilbraham. So that's done 4 times a year. We did it this past year. It actually, the bus in question passed inspection on December 14th, 2023. And also it passed inspection also on August 11th, 2023. And then also July 17, 2023 is when it went to the actual bus inspection station. We do not have a determinative cause of what the fire is because there is no agency that actually investigates school bus fires. So our insurance company did come out, and all they did was adjusters to look at it to see the damage for purposes of refurbishing or giving them money for the bus. DOT does not investigate. And actually the RMV Bus Inspectors Unit did come out and look at it, but they're unwilling per policy to give a determinative cause of what actually caused the bus fire. So we're still trying to get that information for somebody to make a determinative cause. I don't want to speculate and put anything out there from that perspective to have any wrong information. That was a 2011 Thomas Freightliner bus that was in question. And I think the thing that exacerbated the situation was probably a week and a half later, a bus that was on that route broke down in the exact same place on Monday, January 22nd. And that was also a 2011 Thomas Freightliner that broke down too. As of right now, we have a 2025 Bluebird bus that's on the route. So we should not have any issues and concerns, but as you all know, even with new cars, there are some defects and situations from that perspective too. So we're putting things in place, and recently, as of yesterday, Hamlin-Wilbraham Public Schools finished all of their spring bus evacuations. So by law, under Mass General Laws, Chapter 90, Section 7B, 15, you have to have bus evacuations at the beginning of the school year You have to have bus evacuations from one time for January to December and January at the end of the school year. So you have classroom instruction and you have the actual drills twice a year in the fall and the spring. And we just completed the spring for Hamden Wilbraham. We moved it up because of the situation. And we also tried something differently from learning from that meeting. A lot of kids in my previous district, when you did bus evacuations, the door was open and the kids just jumped out. They never had the opportunity to touch the door, to unlock the door, to see whether they could actually unlock the door. So in this situation, we had grades 5 and up that wanted to unlock the door to be able to do it in case of emergency situation. So that is something that we do. Each and every year, our bus drivers do have a series of trainings. Annually, they go through things like student management, loading, unloading. We do bus evacuations. They do winter driving, out of sight, out of mind, to make sure kids are out of the way when they pull off or when they're pulling up. They do railroad crossing training too. They do loading, unloading, bus evacuation, and do special needs training also too. But in addition to that, any of the new bus drivers, they also have emergency training too. They also do vehicle inspection training, basic control of their buses, the shifting of the gears, seeing, communicating, space managing, controlling their speed, seeing hazards, distracted driving, aggressive drivers on the road or road rage, dealing with other drivers, night driving, driving in the fog, winter driving. Also, we have mountain driving because some other districts provide transportation too. We go in hilly areas or mountains. And they also do accident procedures, fires, alcohol and drug and substance training, and then hazardous material training. So those are some of the trainings they get each year on an annual basis from that perspective. We're trying to make sure, one of the things that also came up is about the number of buses and people. There's 3 drivers that we have in the pipeline now that will be coming to Hamden Wilbraham. That's one of the things you asked me about last time that came about. We have 3 new drivers that will be added to the fleet for the buses, probably before February break. 3 more drivers will add to the route, which will expedite the times that the buses are coming in. The new tablets have been rolled out. They are in the buses now, turn-by-turn tablets for all the buses, and we are looking to roll the parent app out in April. That's because of Tyler Technology is launching a new app, and we want to roll it out in April instead of parents downloading the app now and having to download a new app.
I wonder, since it came up at both meetings, if you could speak to the I don't know what you call it, the safety check that's done before the bus leaves the yard in the morning?
Well, it's actually 2 safety checks. We call them DVIRs, daily visual inspection reports. They do one in the AM, and they also do one in the PM run, in the afternoon or PM run. They look from everything outside of the vehicle, from windshields to mirrors to front windows, headlights, exhaust pipes. They walk around the bus, look at the rear door, open and close. They check tires, look under the vehicle, look for body damage. They look inside the vehicle for the seats and see if there's anything left in there. They check all exit doors and windows. And you check the fire extinguisher, any type of emergency equipment, first aid equipment. They check the windshield. They start the engine. They check to make sure the brakes are working, the signals are working, the windshield wipers are working. They test the radio to make sure there's communication back and forth with dispatch. They check all interior and exterior lights, the horn, the actual handle to make sure that it goes out to make sure people to stop. Those are some of the things they do, but they have a checklist they go through twice a day before the AM run and also the PM run.
I have a question because I heard that one of the students on the second bus that started smoking had gone up to the driver and said, you're out of antifreeze. Is antifreeze one of the things that's checked?
Yes, it is checked. The fluids are checked too also, yes.
So was that bus out of antifreeze?
No, actually the second bus that actually broke down, there was a radiator cap pressure. It was leaking antifreeze. They got into the cooling system. They caused it to overheat, but it wasn't out of antifreeze. But it was a leak that got into the system to cause it to overheat.
So how do we make sure that in the inspections, those kinds of things are caught before the bus goes out?
I'm pretty sure that day that was inspected, they didn't see that particular piece until the run actually transpired. It could have happened in between runs when it was back in the yard or before it actually started in the midst of the run. There's no definitive time when that transpired.
So thank you very much for coming today. I appreciate it. I'm sure we all do. My main issue is we need to find out what went wrong, because how do we protect the other vehicles if we don't know what caused this issue? You can do all the inspections that you want, because obviously the inspections failed to find this particular problem. I'm not saying that the inspections are failures. I'm just saying that whatever they're looking for, whatever caused that fire, we weren't looking for it. So I'm sure that parents or, and myself, I have a son who rides the bus, and lots of his friends and our friends ride the bus as well. And I would really need to know what went wrong so we could check the other vehicles, so we could say, hey, this is what went wrong, and we've inspected all the vehicles in the fleet, and that's not going to be a problem with any of those vehicles. Until we know what goes wrong, we're just going to be lucky if we have an inspection that catches it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. It's a problem is trying to find who's going to do that actual determinative factor, because this is something new for all of us of what transpired, of who actually does that particular piece to do determinative factor. Our insurance company comes out just as an adjustment to look at it. R&B doesn't touch it. DOT doesn't touch it. So it's one of those, see what agency is responsible. The Hampton-Wilbraham Fire Department doesn't touch it. The police department's not looking into it because there was no criminal activity involved. So this is something new that's transpired that people are like, okay, who's supposed to do the actual determining factor? So we will try to find an agency that will do that particular piece. I mean, we can do our own inspection from that particular piece to find out, which we can do that, since the insurance
If no
come out.
agency's taking responsibility for it, wouldn't it be, I don't know, just have us do it? Like, send your mechanics down and,
Correct.
and have them look through
Yeah,
it.
they can do that. And you have been looking at it to do that particular piece. But usually you have an outside agency that would come in and look at it. And we didn't want to touch anything until the insurance company came and R&B came. And both those agencies have come. And then we can go forward and make a determinative cause on the situation.
And so potentially there's another ticking time bomb out there on a bus.
I wouldn't say that. I don't think that was symptomatic of the whole fleet. I think that was a situation, it was an accident that transpired to become into a serious matter. I can't say that's something that's going to be throughout the whole fleet of buses. So, we do the daily checks, we do the regulations under the law of doing the 4 times a year, so there's things and precautions that are taken in place. So we're taking those safety precautions on a daily basis, plus the annual actual inspections too. So we're looking at everything. So, as I said
but
before,
what we're doing had failed to find the problem in this vehicle. It wasn't like, there's a problem with this vehicle. We've identified this vehicle as having some kind of problem. Oh, and then it catches fire. Okay. But it's like, no, this passed all inspections. It was doing fine. And then it bursts into flames. I would say that I would be really concerned about our other vehicles until we find out what happened with this one. I'm just saying that's myself.
I share Sean's concerns, and I appreciate if you can't find an outside agency, doing your best to look at the bus yourselves to try to see if you can identify the determinative cause. Out of curiosity, it's a 2011 bus. I don't know what its mileage was. Where is the age and mileage of this bus in comparison to our fleet? Was this the oldest, most rundown bus of the fleet?
No.
Is it one of the new,
It was not. Every year we look at the buses and see what their age and condition are, and then we actually trade buses in to get newer buses. So it wasn't the oldest bus in the fleet. And it wasn't the condition that had any major problems from the perspective of the wear and tear, the brake pads, wipers, things that may have been done to it. Tires changed, but nothing that was major that would cause any type of, flags to come up to say maybe this bus needs to be taken out of service.
how old is the oldest bus in the fleet, and what is the average expected years that we
I think
should hope to get out of it?
Probably about 2009 or 10 is the oldest bus, and you can get as many miles as long as the condition. We keep the maintenance on the bus, but we try to recycle each and every year to look at the oldest of the fleet to bring newer ones in, because sometimes things change. There's updates in the bus, and we want to make sure that we have the best quality buses out there to provide the best service possible. So as you all know, we're going to electric buses probably in the fall, not a full fleet, but it will be electric buses that will be integrated into our buses to begin with, which the Hampton-Wilbraham Public Schools will get 8 of those buses to be within the fleet of buses we currently have over here. And those will all be brand new.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Alvin, I'd like to thank you for coming in, and you're in a hard position. I appreciate that. The first question I asked is pretty simple, and that is, did you guys contact the manufacturer? Bus fires are exceedingly rare, obviously. I think John and Aaron have both said they've never even seen that. But did you guys reach out to the manufacturer?
Yeah, they contacted the manufacturer. We had our mechanics have a conversation. R&D bus inspectors unit came out, but like I said, they're unwilling to put anything on paper or be determinative because it's against their policy. I think they thoroughly looked over the bus to make sure there was no wrongdoing or anything on our behalf, but per policy, they don't put anything on paper.
No. But the manufacturer of the bus, had they had any other issues?
No.
Okay, so this is a one-off.
Yeah.
The next question that I had, and you brought it up, the electric buses. So have we had any, or has LPVEC had any discussions with the fire departments in Hampden and Wilbraham? You know, again, off chance that you get a fire, but a fire on an electric bus is much more serious and requires an incredible amount of water and extinguisher to put it out. If you guys haven't had those discussions, I certainly would. That's something that, you know, we read about that. We know that electric cars, when they catch fire, fire departments have a very, very hard time extinguishing those fires. So I appreciate the diligence. Hopefully you guys will continue to search for a cause. You know, forensic investigations on fires it's very difficult. And I don't know if we're ever going to get a definitive cause. It's very rare that it happens. I think the main issues regarding that particular situation have to do with sort of the real life evacuation drills. The one that you brought up, the thing you brought up that was most telling was that the door was already open, right? So making sure that we have kids who are seated in the bus who know how that door works, much like we do on an airliner. The next one is a protocol for evacuating the bus. I totally get it. The safest place for those kids to be, and I can empathize with the driver, because the safest place for those kids to be is in the bus unless there's a problem with the bus. I mean, imagine offloading a dozen kids onto the side of the road. Now you've got 12 possible targets of injury. If one kid wanders off into the middle of the street, they start goofing around. I get it, it's not an easy situation, but I think a protocol in place to understand, like, what is the amount of time, and then more importantly is, we talked about the real-time communication with public safety officers to immediately say, we have a problem with this bus. So we radio back to headquarters, LPVEC, the call center will essentially send a notice out to the police department, call the police department and say, we got a bus that's broken down and we need somebody there to help manage the situation. So, and then, there's a lot of other things that I'm not going to beat them out. I think we've done a pretty thorough job going through stuff. It's unfortunate that you had a second issue on the same bus route. I mean, it sounds like it's almost like the Bermuda Triangle for buses. But I think that,
It was bad.
the real life drills are important, and making sure that we have a protocol in place so that when there is a problem with a bus and there is a potential for a fire or any type of injury to the children, making sure that we have public safety there as quickly as possible to help the driver manage that situation. So, but I thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it.
If I can just clarify one thing, you said that your mechanics did talk with the manufacturer and they didn't put anything in writing, but did they give them some places to look or something?
We have a
to look out
ballpark
for?
figure, but I'm unwilling to put that out for public
No,
consumption
that's
until
fine.
we can actually
No.
verify some things.
I'm not asking for that. What I'm asking for is, you're saying that we have a ballpark?
Yes.
And that we have inspected our other
Yes.
buses for, that's all I needed to hear. Thank you very much.
I just have one question for you. Have you had any success obtaining someone for dispatch, somebody in the office, just so when calls come in the afternoon?
Yeah, we're working on hiring a person that will take a special person, as I call it, uniform, in order to handle all 3 garages. But as of right now, we're looking to funnel the calls through Brush Hill, which is the central office for LPVEC, and have people assigned to different garages to handle that particular piece. It doesn't happen often, but there are a lot of times where all hands are on deck, are driving the buses, from the transportation general manager, the assistant general manager, to all the supervisors and managers are all in buses because all hands are on deck. So it does happen sometimes there's nobody answers the phones and it rings over, so we're looking to make sure that when people do have concerns or issues or buses are running tardy, they have a live person to contact. And so what I've done with the superintendents also is get a contact tree list of people to contact, like principals, vice principals of schools, let them know if something is going on so they can make an immediate phone call and a message can go out to parents so they know how long the bus will be late or if it will be late. And hopefully when the app comes out that will rectify some of the things, the parents will know exactly when their bus is going to pick up in the AM and know when it's going to drop off because they'll be able to follow the child on an app.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything else for Alvin?
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
We will continue with the discussion of transfer requests, the request process for the 24-25 school year.
And I'm just looking to align with the school committee on this matter. So, as you know, there's been lots of discussion about wanting to have a different way of dealing with transfers in a regional agreement revision. Specifically, discussion about wanting to have the school committee out of the process, and then even had some discussions at the last planning committee about whether there should be a process. However, any changes seem like they're unlikely to be in place by the time decisions need to be made. I'm starting to get requests for transfers for next year, and I just wanted to see if we're on the same page, that you want me to do the same thing we did last year, which is to notify people of the deadline, to gather up all of the requests, and then to make a decision towards the end of the year. Does that seem right?
Yeah, until there are substantive changes to the regional agreement, we're bound by that document.
I think that's the best way to go.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any other ideas that you wanted to bring forth?
I think that's the only thing you can do, given the current status of the agreement, but I just didn't want to do something that was shocking since we've had all this discussion about not doing it that way.
Copy, thank you.
Do you have the current process and the dates available to share now?
The current process is for families to fill out an application, a transfer application. The application is on the district website. I have to check on the deadline, but I would do that as part of sending out a communication to the entire district, just making people aware. We do have some situations that people have made me aware of where they may be requesting an extension, so I have talked to those people individually.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything else on this topic? Okay, thank you. We will move on to public comment. I'm sorry. Okay. So we will call on those that have signed up for public comment or anyone here that wishes to make public comment. We do ask that when you are called that each person state their name and their affiliation with the district. Please sit at a designated spot in front of a microphone and just make sure that it's turned on with a green light. You have up to 2 minutes to speak. And if you have any documents that you would like to share with the committee, please hand them to Aaron Dowding before you begin. And Lisa, are you monitoring time? Sean's going to monitor time.
If you want to do it, that's better. You're the secretary.
Okay. Is there anyone else here? Is there anyone interested in making public comment? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Karen Romano.
It's not on.
We just want to press the button.
Press the button on the
right
bottom.
in the middle of the front.
Press the button on the bottom there, and the green light goes on. There you go.
My name is Karen Romano. I am the parent of 4 children in district. I have 2 at the junior high and 2 at Mile Tree currently. My comments are really with regards to the reorganization plans. And I guess I start by saying that, and I had this conversation with Mr. Kennedy earlier, my hope is, and my belief is that you all have way more information about this process and what it's going to look like and how it's going to all go than I do. So my comments really are sort of cautionary in the sense of, one, I have some kind of history with regards to this type of thing in that I was in district as a child. I was part of the shift when Memorial and Sewell Road were no longer neighborhood schools and were joined together. So my 3rd grade year was when Memorial and Sewell Road combined for 3rd through 5th grade. It was a challenging time for those of us that were part of that combination because it was a good-sized group of kids that had not been sort of introduced to each other previously. And there was a lot of struggle with trying to figure out kind of where everybody fit into the mix. And my concern is that going back to neighborhood schools or zone schools, as I think they're being referred to, potentially brings some of that piece back up. And potentially brings up sort of a bifurcation in the town that I feel like we've gotten rid of to some extent over the last few years because all of the kids have been able to go to school together and know each other from young ages through. I think we've lost some of that, sort of distinction of, North Wilbraham versus South Wilbraham.
Sorry, it's 2 minutes.
Thank you, Karen.
Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment?
Michelle, I have a letter that was sent to me. I sent it to you earlier. It's from Joe Wallace, and he asked if I would read it tonight at the meeting because he couldn't be here. It says, "Dear school committee, I have a child who rides bus 22. I'm highly concerned with the number of times she's been late to school or returning from school due to a lack of bus drivers. While I do not have all the data, I feel as though the bus is late at least once per week. It's my understanding our bus driver resigned, leaving us without a permanent driver. While I understand bus drivers have a specific route each day, I feel it's incredibly unfair that children who ride bus 22 receive a lesser education than students who have a permanent bus driver. It's my understanding the bus driver left due to bad behavior from children on the bus. Here are my questions. 1, is it fair that students riding a certain bus are receiving a lesser education, potentially missing out on hours of their education? Does the district have data regarding how many hours students on each bus have missed? Number 2, what is the plan to remedy the situation? Number 3, does the district have a policy regarding bus behavior, including consequences for misbehavior? My recommendation is to create a formal behavior policy which is sent to all parents. Children who misbehave on the bus should receive progressive discipline from warnings to bus suspensions. Number 2, create a driver rotation so that students on one bus are not the only ones impacted by a shortage. Rotating will equalize the impact, not adversely impact only one bus or one group of students. And then lastly, Erin Dowding is incredible. Return my message regarding this after hours. I wanted to publicly recognize her for listening and caring. Thank you, Joe Wallace. Good job, Erin.
Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment?
Michelle, I think I forwarded that to you.
Yes.
So if we can, Erin, you should have a copy. I forwarded it to Michelle. Do you want me to forward it to you, and then you can print it out for the record? Okay, I'll do that right now.
Okay, thank you very much. We will continue with subcommittee updates. We will begin with the curriculum subcommittee. Lisa?
Okay, so curriculum sub met and we went over the proposed program of studies, which is in your binder right now. I guess we can quickly go over it if you have any questions, and I would hope next time we talk about it there would be a vote to accept it. All right. Steve, if you want to come join too.
Principal Hale, how you doing?
Yeah,
Is that Diet Coke?
yeah.
You could drink that and still sleep at night? Or do you
Obviously,
sleep?
It's working well for my figure, first of all. Second of all, I can drink caffeine all.
I'm impressed.
Yeah.
All right, so the first proposed change was to combine CP American Experience and CP American Identity into one American Literature course. The reasoning being that they were similar and students didn't really understand the difference. So one course was becoming full and the other course wasn't getting that many students signing up for it. So it's a combination of the curriculum. So we can have some full classes. Nothing in PE, nothing in math. Let's see, the deletion of Learning Center Financial Algebra. The reasoning, they're going to be in inclusion courses with support. Science, delete CP Environmental Science and Honors Environmental Science for the grade 9 experience, and they're gonna take CP Biology or Honors Biology. My understanding, but you can correct me for this, is learning the material so that they're ready for science MCAS and have more opportunities to take MCAS if they need to.
Yes, we're trying to increase the rigor of science, the science curriculum. And so instead of waiting until sophomore year before they take biology, we're pushing it down to freshman year, which will create more opportunities junior and senior year.
That's, just a comment, that's actually a very smart move, because I know Marissa, my 11th grader, got into a little bit of a snag with that, because she wanted to take biology, but she was taking honors chemistry and then AP chemistry, and her course, there was a conflict in the scheduling, because the courses were at the same time, so I think it's a smart move.
Steve, will AP biology become an option? For those that want to take it, that might be hard.
Not at the freshman level.
Okay.
So you can, right now, the way that it currently works is you would take honors biology as a sophomore, and then your second semester you would take AP bio. We've had some growing pains with pushing the College Board AP curriculum down to 9th grade with human geography. It's a
hard course.
college level course for the college level curriculum, and that's tough for 14-year-olds, especially kids who've always found success in school, and then they get challenged with something that for the first time and persevering through that challenge. So we would keep AP Bio as a sophomore level class, but they would, in their sophomore curriculum, it would only take up 1 semester versus 2 now.
I would say for the AP Hub course, because I know my freshman took it, and that was the first year that we offered it, and I would offer congratulations to the teacher for doing a very nice job. It's hard to come in and teach a course from the ground up.
Absolutely.
And she had an excellent experience. She thought it was a very good course. So nice job to her.
All right, next up is Fine Arts, and the change there is changing AP Studio Art and Design parts 1 through 3 into alternating days for the full year instead of just having it for 1 semester. The reasoning would be students that are planning on continuing their education after Minnetonka, they need to build portfolios to submit, and they need guidance from their teachers on their portfolios. And when they only have it for a semester, and then they don't have one for the next semester, it's a hard time to meet with teachers and get the support. And I think there was the potential to have more portfolios doing it this way.
It does. The College Board AP program for art offers a bunch of different avenues to go, and it depends on the portfolio the student wants to put together. By doing it every other day, it gives them more opportunities throughout the school year to create more portfolios if that's what they desire.
Next change is deleting intro to piano and intro to guitar and combining it into CP Modern Rock Band. Reasoning being there wasn't that many signups for them individually, but perhaps if they're combined in with some other rock band type things, there will be more interest in signing up for the courses.
Yeah, our hope is that, to take 90 days of intro to guitar, if you're thinking maybe I want to try the guitar, that's a long commitment. So by doing the rock band philosophy, they're going to get about 6 to 8 weeks of guitar, 6 to 8 weeks of percussion, 6 to 8 weeks of keyboard, piano, and 6 to 8 weeks of vocalization, so that they can, try out different things and still experience those different instruments. And, maybe we'll produce some stuff that we can sell.
No changes in world language, nothing in history and social science.
Actually, that's really not a bad idea. That the music that they create, put on an album, I'll buy it.
There you go.
You get a theme song for Minichog.
Yeah.
Might be an issue with copyright. Just saying.
Tech ed, business, and computer science. Reactivating CP electronics and robotics, which is self-explanatory, like that's great. And then a new tech ed teacher has experience teaching robotics in a former district and in Project Lead the Way. So there's an experienced teacher that will be able to do that. Anything else you want to say about that?
No, other than the materials that we will purchase for that are reusable. So it's not equipment that we have to buy every year. And that's how it was designed in this former district of Northampton.
So it's not going to be BattleBots?
No,
That would be cool.
they can do the first robotics competition through their learning of that, but we wouldn't necessarily have a first robotics program for every kid, because then that gets super expensive, because a lot of the time you use it and then you can salvage what you can salvage, but then you have to get new stuff.
All right, special offerings. CP Yearbook is now going to be an offering. It was an after-school club, but the complexity of yearbooks now, and the amount you have to do for yearbooks, the design, the deadlines, and it's not guaranteed that you would have sign-ups for yearbook after school, so now it's going to be an option, a special offering.
That would also run every other day during the course of the year, because yearbook happens all year.
All right, and then introducing for 11th and 12th grade honors teacher assistant program. So juniors and seniors will have the opportunity to be a TA at freshman level core classes, which would probably help some students if they're thinking about going into something like that in the future.
Well, education is struggling to find teachers, especially in the West Mass area, so part of our motivation is to allow kids to try it and hopefully recruit kids that might be good at it to go on and pursue that in college. The other motivation is to provide juniors with that opportunity of an internship during the school day. Currently, we only have the work-based internship for seniors, so this expands that and says, well, what if you want a TA in a freshman level class? And I think the third motivation is it provides the teacher some support and some tier 2 support for students that might be struggling within their freshman experience.
Cool.
Okay, so those are the proposed changes for the program of studies. Question?
I have a
Okay.
question for the TA. What will be the cutoff point for students who want to be in the TA program, will you run it with just one person and being a TA for one teacher, or will you want 10 kids at least? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm not sure. You know, I think it'll start with an application process and talking about it with students to see who might be interested in that opportunity. And also, we're hoping the motivation is the honors GPA bump, but also what that might look like in a future college application to say I TA'd in a class. So we don't know. We don't know if we'll be dealing with 75 signups or three. So we'll deal with that as it presents and try to make the matches the best we can. But I'm guessing in year one, because the seniors tend to lean towards the work-based learning internships because that allows them to go off campus, that you're probably talking about juniors and maybe you'll have like 7 to 10.
And do we have teachers who want to volunteer for?
I think we have 7 to 10 teachers that would love some help in our class.
Thank you.
Steve, are you happy with this?
Yeah.
Great.
Truth be told, we are anticipating a number of changes to the 25, 26 program of studies. So we didn't expend, you know, changing the whole thing. I mean, the biology change is huge. So you're going to have half the school taking biology next year because you have the current freshmen who need to take biology and then all the incoming freshmen who need to take biology. So the MCAS will be, like next week we have 170 sophomores taking the MCAS. Next year we have half the school. So it's not that we didn't take on big bites, but we were smart about how we're doing it because we know that next year's program of studies will be interesting.
Excellent, thank you. Just a quick question. So anticipating the years to come, what are your wish list items if you have them, and what do you see as the impediments to receiving those wish list items?
Well, I think over the summer we put together a really good proposal for not just physical plant wish lists, curriculum item wish list, staffing wish list, kinds of things. So I think Aaron did a really good job of kind of framing that. You know, the impediments I think are just, it's time. You know, like when we'll be given the go-ahead to say, this is happening, and now the planning becomes real. So I think time's the biggest hurdle. Kids adjust.
Yes.
We worry as adults. We do. You know, I'm a dad too, and I worry.
Yeah, kids are malleable.
The kids are like, what is a big deal?
Yeah. No, sorry. Thanks very much.
Yeah, no problem.
I just had a quick question. I wondered if students are allowed to propose new courses.
Yes.
Yes.
So part of what happens is we survey them annually about what classes they might want to see. And the second thing is we encourage them to talk to their department chairs in the different departments to say, this is a course we'd like to see. It came up recently as a civics project where the kids were talking about, we want to be able to propose our own classes. And I went into the class and I'm like, you already can. What would you like to see? How would that work? What budget implications might that be? You know, so those are the kinds of things that they don't always think about. What might it replace? Do we have certified staff to teach it? Because the schedules are tube and toothpaste. When you're creating it, you have to think about your staff resources. You have to think of your budgetary concrete resources, and then you have to think about student interest. Because the schedule is totally student-centered. They sign up for whatever they want to take. It's very few and far between that we say to a kid, you are taking this course here. So,
Thank you.
yeah. And so you're voting next meeting? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
All right, so we will move on to the planning committee. So everybody, last time we kind of jumped ahead and we looked at some of the options that we had for the regional agreement. So the planning committee met on January 19th and went through the regional agreement. Did you want to go through? I have the results of what we decided, but I'd like to go through.
How about if I just back you up?
Okay.
Because I have my notes too.
Okay. Mine are short and sweet. Okay. So when we're looking at the regional agreement, the discussion about educating students, the planning committee is recommending option 1.2, which has to do with the town lines. And allowing, not eliminating them, but allowing the district to place students where it's necessary. Regarding the election of the school committee members, the planning committee recommends on option 2.1, so that is keeping it as it currently is, which begins, so the term would begin July 1st and not immediately following election. The school committee vote, the planning committee is recommending option 3.2, which is the weighted vote, which is currently how we're doing it. So there's 5 members from Wilbraham and 2 from Camden.
Actually, Michelle, could you give what the vote was on these so that the school committee can understand?
Oh, you want to know how many people voted for it? Okay, so educating students, it was, I believe it was 3-1. Election of school committee, unanimous. School committee member vote, unanimous. Elementary schools, we voted on, we are recommending option 4.2, and that is simply to match the preamble, which is where students are educated. So that was also unanimous. Regarding vocational students, the planning committee is recommending option 5.2, which is rolling the costs into each town's assessment, as we're currently doing. And we did not,
Isn't that the option where it's rolled into the assessment and then divided between the towns?
Correct.
Not to the individuals?
Correct.
And then regarding vacancies, so it was recommended that the remaining members from the town where the vacancy occurred with the select board from that member town. And so when it comes to the policy, when we read through the policies, we are just going to want to make sure that we change the language if we choose to move forward with that and make sure that we align it with policy BBBE. So for the assessments.
Wait, just a quick one on that. I believe that the way the BBB, was it BBBH or BB? Wait, I got it right here. Yeah, it's not BBB, the robot. I just had it out. I was just looking at it. But whatever it was, it needs to be clarified in there. Because it does not state clearly enough that when a Wilbraham member it leaves for whatever reason, it would be the rest of the members from Wilbraham plus the Wilbraham Board of Selectmen. The way it reads to me is it would be the remaining people on the school committee plus the Board of Selectmen. But it doesn't really clarify it inside the policy, so we should.
That it's the Board of Selectmen for the town.
Yes. So Wilbraham members.
So remaining
and
members from
Wilbraham
the
Board
town
of
where the
Selectmen.
vacancy occurred with the select board from that member town.
Okay. Is that a policy that's on for a reading?
Yes.
It's actually on for a vote tonight,
Yep.
so it might be a good one to set aside until we figure this out.
That's why I wanted to recommend.
All right, so
mention that
let's
tonight.
pull that one out. What is the letter call for that one again?
It's BBBE.
BBBE. Okay. All right, so.
No, okay. Yes. Because what it says is when a vacancy on a school committee occurs for any reason, the Board of Selectmen and the remaining members of the committee share the responsibility for filing it. This should make it clear, Board of Selectmen from the town and school committee members from the town.
All right, so I'm going to strike that from when we get to the policy committee, and then let's have that put on for discussion at the next policy committee meeting with your best interpretation of what you think the changes should be, John, and then we'll start. We'll have, if we approve it, we'll have to start again with the first reading, and second reading, and third reading.
Well, no,
Has
I
a little
mean,
bit changed?
no, because you're still on two. You can modify it when you're going through the readings. This could be a modification that comes
Okay.
in
All
for
right,
the
so
final vote.
it could be it could have its third reading at the next meeting. Okay,
Correct.
no problem.
And clarification on number 3, is that keeping the way we do it now, not like somebody's vote is worth 1.06, that one?
Correct, so it would be the weighted vote. So currently, as we're doing it now,
Each person's vote counts 1.
it's, what's the percentage? It doesn't,
It's, right, for most votes, every person's vote counts as one. There are some scenarios that come up where you need a 2/3 vote, or where you have less than a full committee present for a meeting, where there might be an issue. But for the most part, it's one person, one vote at the table.
I just can, that line, I'm still bothered by the U.S. Constitution requirements, because that's not I see anything working in government, both local and state and federal. So I think maybe somebody in the Massachusetts Education Department went overboard interpreting it.
okay. And regarding assessments, it was recommended that we move forward with option 6.3, which is the alternative method. And that vote was 3-1. And John, I'm going to have you elaborate a little further on the assessment.
Sure.
So if you turn in your document that has the blue type face, and go to section 4, the last paragraph in section 4, you'll see two alternative assessment methods.
If you would go and find section 5, if you look over here.
Yeah.
If you go to section 5, it's the paragraph before. Okay? So here, let's look right here, so you want to find it.
Got it?
Okay.
I don't have any edits in it. Okay.
You want me to?
So
I got it.
what this language is here is substitution language that will go in in either option 6.1 or 6.2 right at the beginning where we talk about assessment method. So both of them have identical language for assessment method. The difference between 6.1 and 6.2 is whether the middle school is considered a regional building or not. So that is a decision that has to come. But when that comes, the planning committee is recommending that you replace the assessment method language with this 2 alternative assessment that says basically we are going to follow a moving average method that is based on multiple years, and that's going to be used instead of just the October 1st count for that year, provided that both towns agreed to the alternative assessment method in that year. In the event that both towns don't approve the alternative assessment, it goes back to the statutory method, which is what we currently have in the agreement. And it's kind of academic because you need both towns to pass the budget to have any budget.
So it will be fluid, potentially changing year to year?
Correct. If you have an alternative assessment method, it has to be approved every year. So you could have an alternative assessment one year and then the statutory method the next year, conceivably.
Yeah, that method, the way it's written, has to be, in order for us to use the 5-year average, each year we have to vote to use the 5-year average. I don't understand why we just can't make it the 5-year average without voting on it, but this is what we were told.
It's actually a 3-year average in this version.
I was going to say, I thought it was 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm confused. I'm sorry. So, are you saying, will we be able to change the regional agreement if we get an affirmative vote in both towns to go to the alternative method? If we get that from both towns, then that would be what we would use going forward, so we wouldn't need to approve.
No, it's only an option. Approving this puts the option in there that at town meetings we can say, this year we're going to use the 3-year average.
That's correct. So you always have to have the statutory method as a backup.
Okay.
If your agreement includes an optional method, then you can implement the optional method, but you have to have agreement from both towns to do the optional method in each cycle.
Gotcha, okay.
Could you explain why, again, we just can't have the optional method as our method inside the regional agreement?
I believe the reason is because it's a deviation from the statute. And in the event that you don't have agreement of all the parties to deviate from the statute, you have a law to follow.
Makes sense.
And then finally, on the transfers, there was a recommendation to add language disallowing parental requests for school transfers, and all transfers are at the discretion of the superintendent for educational purposes only. So this would be preventing parents to choice their child within the district.
And what was the vote on that one?
That was probably 3-1. And so are there any questions on any of those?
The 3-1 was in favor of not allowing parents to make a request.
Correct.
And we're talking about the parent, I mean, right now the parents can make a request, which may or may not be honored, correct? Depending on
Correct.
the superintendent and stuff like that.
The school committee is voting.
So we really want to say that they're not even allowed to open their mouths and make a request.
Well, currently the way it works is that the parent is filling out a request and then the school committee is voting. So we are removing, well, for one, we're removing the school committee from the process and making it the superintendent's discretion. And at the second point, so again, this is going to be, we haven't discussed which option the planning committee discussed, but it's just to allow, so if we're saying that we want to proceed with, a certain option because of these reasons, maybe, more equitable class sizes throughout the district, for example, rather than parents then saying, requesting that their student go to a certain school to be with their friend. We're just trying to prevent that.
So the parents can still make a request, it just won't come to the school committee. John will take their request into account and decide if he feels it's an appropriate switch or not.
Actually, the planning committee was proposing something more restrictive than that, basically saying that there are no transfers unless there's an educationally compelling reason for it. Part of it was from my perspective, some of the concerns that were brought up in public comment that, there could be perceptions that one school was better than another school, and that could undo all of the work that the district might have to do to balance schools. Another reason is because we've seen kind of what's happened with transfers happening now. It has been kind of a floodgate that's been hard to turn off. So if we're going to do this, the idea is that the transfers would be if there was a strong educational reason. So for example, if there was a program offered in one school that wasn't offered in the other school, if there was a stay-away order, then we were trying to keep a student away from another student who, maybe prevented from having contact with that student, but really limiting it to very specific kinds of cases and not having it be basically a request.
So,
Yes, but once again, if they can make a request and you could decide that's not going to happen. I think that's different than saying, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to make a request.
no, that's what it is. It's a, you're not allowed to make requests.
Yeah.
So
that's-
basically, under this system, when you have the option 2, where the neighborhood schools are back into effect, which was the recommendation from that committee,
We didn't get there yet.
if you wanted to go to one school over the other school, you can't even make the request unless it's based in an educational reason to the superintendent, and you can't make the request to the
I
superintendent.
understand. So this is to try to counter all the dissatisfaction that might result if history repeats itself and the neighborhood schools become disequitable as they were before, which is the whole reason that they were broken apart and everything was made equitable across the school district at great cost and disruption to education, as we heard about.
Is it equitable to Hamden though?
Is it? That's a great question.
Is it equitable to Hamden right now?
I'm not an expert elementary educator, but I wish Wilbraham had a Green Meadows. One big
I wish
elementary
Wilbraham
school
kids
that
could
could
go to
hold
Green
all the
Meadows.
grades. So I would argue, no, it's not equitable. I think the situation in Hamden is much better. But that's only one perspective. All the little kids going to one school, easiest for all the parents and all that kind of stuff, but it's not an option. It's not an option for Wilbraham right now.
It came from just not a lot, so people didn't have a preference, preferential school.
So you bring up a great point, and I would argue, as I've spoken with many residents, that the educational system, we focused on the middle school for years, but we've never really looked at the inequity that we see in the district when we compare the structure of the elementary schools in Wilbraham versus Green Meadows. We know that transitions negatively impact students, and yet in Green Meadows we have K through 5. So you have continuity, 6 years for those kids. We have only 2 years in every building in our district. So I would make the argument that there has been inequity since the reorganization occurred 13 years, 14 years ago. And that we're just getting around to understanding that, it really isn't. Yeah, I agree with you. I'd love to have a school where my kids can go and for 6 years they have, the same teachers, the same administrators, the same custodians. And that's great, but we don't have that. And so we're trying to get closer to that. As far as good schools, bad schools, we're one district, and we should be looking at pieces of inequity or perceived inequity all the time. But I can tell you that structurally what we have right now is incredibly unfair. We have very low class sizes in Hamden compared to Wilbraham, and we have basically a number of transitions for Wilbraham students that Hamden students don't have.
So with that, the planning committee has recommended, it was option 2, which is Green Meadows being a pre-K to 5 school, Mile Tree being K to 1, Stony Hill being grades 2 to 5, Sewell Road being grades 2 to 5, Wilbraham Middle being grades 6 to 7, Minnetonka Regional High School being grades 8 to 12, and that would include the closure of TWB in Hamden.
I would like to say that,
Microphone on.
Having
Turn the microphone on.
having been a teacher when it was at Memorial and being K to 5 school there, having been an administrator at both a K to 5 and then at the 2-year schools that we had, I was very, very impressed with the education that was given to the children in 2-year schools. I also felt, well, for one thing, you had 7 at least at Stony Hill, and I think at Sewell too, you had 7 classrooms that were devoted to the same grade level. That meant that those 7 teachers could plan together and look at the best and the brightest and the things that really captured children in each classroom. They had an ability not to kind of be pitted against each other in different schools. They had their own classes and their own curriculum. Also, the neighborhood school concept was a disadvantage depending on where you lived in Wilbraham. If you lived in a part of Wilbraham that wasn't as wealthy as another part, your school wasn't as wealthy, and there were significant disruptions in your education. I know when I was a principal, we had kids who would walk from beyond the Boston Road in socks to school, 2nd graders. I mean, there is a lot of, not everyone in Wilbraham is wealthy. Not everyone in Wilbraham can afford not to work and be there with their children. But the schools were safe when they were 2 to 3, 4 to 5. You were with your brothers and sisters if they were older or younger. I just feel like the education that I saw in a K to 5 school versus a 2 to 3 school was far better when it was a band of teachers who all taught the curriculum the same way. They were all on the same page. And I'm really, I'll be really disappointed if we lose that.
So I think I'm on the same page with Cheryl. So to clarify, so we talked about clearly what option 2 was, which was what was recommended by a 3-to-1 vote by the planning committee. I'm going to talk about, compare it to option 1. Just to be clear, they're very similar, with Mile Tree having K to 1, Green Meadows getting pre-K to 5, Stony Hill getting 2 to 3, Sewell Road getting 4 to 5, TWB closed, Wilbraham Middle School 6 to 7, and the high school 8th grade moving up to the high school. As I've listened to the discussions over the years, I've kind of had the feeling that our superintendent was recommending option 1, our teachers were recommending option 1. We have kind of proof of history where option 2, we kind of had option 2, neighborhood schools in the town, which didn't work for this equity reasons. So I would love to hear from Sean and Michelle, what was the discussion that led to everyone feeling very strongly that option 2 was the way to go and not listening? I'm always a believer in bring in and hire good people and then listen to them. And so this seems like a deviation from us listening to our teachers who are excellent and know what they're doing, and our superintendents. I just wanted to hear the summary of what the discussion was that went down.
Why don't you go first, since you represent the majority?
So when the planning committee was formed, there were several things that we were looking at. So there was overcrowding, reducing transitions, making sure that we can provide the best educational experience and opportunities for students to hopefully allow for their success and academic achievement. And then, something that we always have to keep in mind is costs. So those were the driving factors when we looked at all the options. And again, we started with 136 options. There were certain things that were restricted, some of those options, and then, as you know, we came down to these ones. But I think a lot of those things are things that came into play when making the decision. So because what happens is with option 1, you're only really adjusting one of the issues. So you're reducing overcrowding at the middle school by moving the 8th grade to Minnetonka, but we still have overcrowding at Mile Tree, and there's still overcrowding at
No,
Stony Hill.
Pre-K will get moved to Green Meadows in that model, so that will address the overcrowding in Mile Tree. It does not fix Stony Hill.
So it's just a matter of, are we just going to shift the problem? So it was just, conversations and looking at, the discussions and looking at the information that we received as far as, building layout, reconfiguration. And I will say that, while at some of our planning committees, we have heard from staff, I believe one of the planning committees that we had, we invited parents, staff, and teachers to attend the meeting. And we did hear from a small subset of people. But I don't know that it was representative of everybody in the district, because again, we had a few more people at that meeting than we do tonight. So I would love to hear from more people, and I actually was going to recommend, and hopefully the committee would be in agreement. We're not voting for anything tonight, the school committee, because the planning committee, again, remember, was just simply making a recommendation based on the information that we had. And the school committee is ultimately the body that is going to be voting along with both towns. Hamden is going to be voting hopefully at their spring meeting, as will Wilbraham. And then we also need to have approval from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So, but before we take a vote as a school committee, I would love to have some sort of forum or platform or meeting to hear from the teachers and the staff in the district, because I don't believe that we've heard from many of them. This change is going to affect all of the teachers in the district and all of the staff, and so I think it's really important to hear from them prior to voting. But I do believe that we've heard, we've received emails from parents, from staff. I know there's a lot of questions, which after we have a conversation, I know some questions that have come up, just to address some of those things. Some of the questions we don't exactly have answers to. But again, the first part was just making a recommendation to bring to the school committee, so then we could have that further discussion. Sean?
So, did you want to comment? Yeah, I thought actually we were voting on this tonight. I thought it was critical to get the vote done so we could let the district know what we've decided and move on. But we did have a platform and a forum for people to talk to. We had, John had many meet and greets. We had meet and greets with the committee, with the townspeople, with teachers, administrators, and we heard a lot. And yes, it's not 100% of teachers like one way over the other. It's not 100% of parents that like one way over another. It's not 100% of administrators that like one way over another. There are good and bad things that can be said. Some of the things that have been floating around was that, teachers fear change. That's one of the reasons, to not, to change to neighborhood schools, because, teachers don't like change, and that's why they're saying, or the majority that I've been talking to are saying, keep it the way it is. I don't think that, I think if a teacher believes one way over another, whether it's option one or option two, they're going to speak truthful, and they're not going to let that fear of change cloud their judgment. The other thing is, I know a lot of parents they like it because it's easier to pick up their kids. It's easier to pick up your kids in a neighborhood school because they're all at one school. There's some discussion about we could save some money on busing if we do neighborhood schools. Again, I'm worried about the best education, and yes, it's important if we can save money, but if it costs a little more to bus the kids to get a better education, I say let's go with that. We were told that the curriculum is now standardized.
Not to interrupt you, Sean, but
Sure.
I did want to point out that option number 2 is a little more than $20,000 more expensive than option
Okay, there you
number 1.
go.
So I agree with you.
All right. And that the curriculum, that it's now standardized, so that, I guess, because the curriculum is standardized, everyone's going to be teaching the same lesson, and I guess maybe it's not as critical having teachers talk to each other about that, I guess. I'm not quite sure on that argument. And it was also that it doesn't really help Stony Hill with this new proposal. We would still have to do either some modulars or something like that to help out Stony Hill. I tell you, I can see how both can work, but at the end of the day, it just makes sense to me to have all the students together as long as we can possibly do that, or a majority of the students together as long as possible, with all the teachers and everything all together in one place, so that any issue of any student can be answered right there in the building. You don't have to have the solution in another room. I grew up in a town that had 3 elementary schools, all doing, I think it was 1st through 6th. There was a really good school, and there was a really bad school, and there was one that was kind of in the middle. You know, there was definitely, oh, you really want to go to summer school, or you don't want to go to Huckleberry Hill School, you know, or, you know, so I'm just saying I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything about that. I might hear one teacher's better than another, but you don't hear like a whole school, because all the children share the schools. I was at one vote that voted against. I really think that option 1 it just seems logical in everything that I've talked to people about. The one thing that does weigh on me about option 1 is with our special ed students. Special ed students, change is a challenge. But under this option, we do have Green Meadows School. And I don't know if for children that maybe the change is that more difficult for, that we can maybe give them Green Meadows as an option. I don't know. It's just a thought that came to it. I know it sounds like, I don't know if what I just said sounds good or sounds bad.
It does.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, it's like, we need options, you know, so.
I'm sorry, I know Rich, you wanted to say something. I quickly wanted to add, because I failed to include it in the configuration, the transition program that currently is at TWB will be moved to the high school, so the high school will be grades 8 to 12, as well as the transition program.
And that's why that we can't have, or we wouldn't be able to have the preschool here at the high school anymore, because I believe those rooms would then be used by that group that is coming over here, the 18 through 24? 22. 18 to 22. So again, just to make this clear, everyone at this table, everyone out there, everyone listening and watching this, everyone wants what's best for our kids. It's just, you have different opinions, and there's so much different information out there, and it depends what weighs more in your heart, so.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Rich.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Just wanted to say a couple of things. Obviously, the goal is to do what's best for all the kids. And so I tried to make and I don't think I had enough data, but initially I made a little line on a piece of paper with the pros and cons of each way. And right now it's, somewhere in the middle. But what Cheryl said as an educator means a lot, in her experiences. When you look at stuff, I always want to get the data. So, when somebody says it's common knowledge per se, or that transition is bad, I haven't seen, proof. I'm sure it is in some cases, but where's the data to show how bad is it, how much worse is it? What is the data to say transition isn't good? And no matter which plan we have, there's still transitions, whether there's 3 or 4, per se, in terms of one being one way, one being the other. In terms of, so I don't know if I put that as high as other educational reasons to go one way or another. Picking kids up, the average family nowadays is about 2, so no matter what you do, there's going to be many cases where you have one kid in one school and one kid in another school, no matter what you have, although yes, there'd be a little difference in the number of years that happens, but not significant. So really, what do the educators, the teachers really want? The families, I do agree with the equality thing, that having all the grades together will stop the division. I want to go to this school, I want to go to that school. So I'm trying to put the differences on each side. Sports too, if you maybe having all the kids in grade level in one school for the sports teams, and you're going to put them over to the other school to have one team for the 7th grade. How's that going to work? So just trying to weigh it. I don't know if I had enough data to say one way or the other, but right now, just the data that I've put on, it's maybe incomplete. I lean to more what Cheryl said in terms of the way going forward is where I lean right now. I'm not saying it's sold that way, but I think we all need to put the differences on a sheet, the pluses, the minuses of each plan, more or less, and really look at it concretely. And then you have enough data to make the decisions you have. Make sure we don't put statements up there that aren't supported by data.
I just wanted to say that I'm glad that we're not voting tonight, because I think you have to be cautious about, everybody has to be cautious about what they hear, because, yes, some of the teachers said they don't want to change, but I've had many teachers tell me they do want a change. So you have to be cautious on making broad statements about how everybody feels, and they don't just to be cautious.
So I would start off by putting a disclaimer out there that I really don't have a dog in the fight, because my youngest is in 6th grade. Right? So my kids are older, so they're not impacted by this at all. And so I've tried to approach this in as logical a fashion as possible, and I appreciate, Rich, what you said about data. And what do we have as far as the experience in our town, but also what is the experience statewide, nationwide? So the first question that I think needs to be asked is, when we look at the configuration of education, we look at the history, we realize that there have been two major shifts in the last 120 years in this country. Really, the first major shift occurred around the turn of the 20th century with the separation of secondary schools, the creation of high schools. Prior to that, we were looking at one-room schoolhouses. The second occurred sometime in the 60s, where we began offering junior high schools and middle schools. And I've done a lot of reading at night. Kids go to bed, I'm able to kind of peruse and see what's out there. And what I find very interesting is that there is a shift afoot. And we talk about transitions, and we talk about the evolution of education. And people are beginning to realize that those transitions are impactful. So I would say, if we want to do a really neat sort of historical look, it would be pretty easy to pull up our MCAS data. I know MCAS is not the only test that we have, but are our students doing better than they were before by switching schools every 2 years? We don't really have a lot of information on that, and I appreciate that. So, the idea of going in and offering a, sort of an anecdotal response to say, well, we got a better education, do we have objective data to actually support that? And I think that's an important question to ask. The next question that we need to ask is, when we look at grade configurations, again, is what do the data tell us about educational success? What is the best model that works? And from the reading that I've done, I've spent quite a bit of time looking at it, the data are telling us that those transitions are important, and that the schools that offer the most continuity for students over a longer period, those students academically are more successful. And if our North Star is educational excellence, then we should be true to the paradigm that we purport to follow in this district, where we will look at data and we will make data-driven decisions. So we can look at the gut reaction, or we can actually do a little bit of a dive and see what do we know is true from objective research versus what do we know from somebody's gut. And I'd be interested to see. I would venture to say that there is no significant difference in student achievement going from, 6 years in one building versus 2 years in every grade. The last thing that I would put out there is, when we talk about the busing situation, we talk about, the idea of, having kids one school, another school. There's a convenience factor to that, but there's also a real financial factor to that. Because we know that if we go to the neighborhood school configuration, there will be a cost savings in transportation. We'll not need as many buses. So, and that is a factor, it's what we deal with. How much is the budget shortfall this year? 1.8 million? Yeah. So if you offer a way of, that is, and unfortunately that is a piece, but we really need to look at what our, what the data tell us, and from what I've read, we're beginning to see transitions of school districts away from middle school models and back to K-6, K-7, and then doing 8 through 12 high school, 7 through 12 high school. So, I think all of those things need to be on the table. And even when we talk about separating K-1, again, we've got K-1, and I like the idea of an early childhood center. Certainly, it's great if you can do pre-K, K, because you can catch those kids in the pre-K program who have identified needs, and we can begin working with the people in the district earlier, so by the time they get to kindergarten or first grade, we've been able to address those issues. As far as the the 2 to 5, I mean, as long as we're able to move kids, the biggest issue we have right now is that we're still over at Stony, we're still over at Mile Tree. Yes, you moved the pre-K out, so you're eliminated, it was only 15, but we're 60 short in Green Meadows, so that's basically your difference at Stony Hill. So having the ability to move students from one building to another, that will give you the ability to even out the number of students, maximize the buildings that we have, and provide a more equitable education for the students in the district overall. And that's, I think, the biggest piece of this. We simply, if we don't address that, if we don't address the ability to move kids from Wilbraham to Hamden, it doesn't matter what our configuration is. We're not changing the number of chairs on the deck, we're just rearranging them. So whether it's 2 to 5, or whether it's, or 2, 3, 4, 5, it's still the same number of students. We still are overcrowded.
John, do you mind, could you speak to how the zones work? So when we talk about educating students, and we talked about, voting, or the recommendation of option 1.2, how would zones be determined? What does that look like? Are they going to shift every year? If a student is placed in one school, could they possibly have to change? If they're placed in one school in grade 2, would they possibly have to change for grade 3? Just hypothetically.
Well, that's a very personal question for me, because I grew up in the neighboring community of Palmer. I never changed my residence. I went to Park Street School, Thorndike Street School, and Thorndike Grammar School, which were all K-8 schools, because of Proposition 2.5, the district was always redoing the busing, and I hated that. So I think when a student is in a school, they need to be able to finish in the school, whatever happens. In terms of how the zones would work, if this option were to pass, option 2, one thing I would ask the committee for is the ability to work with Mars or some consulting group to figure out how to design the zones so that student populations were matched as equitably as possible. So one of the things I mentioned in our discussion at the last planning meeting is it wouldn't necessarily be that you are attending the school that you live closest to. In my last district, there were 4 elementary schools, and some kids drove by 2 schools to get to the school they were going to, because that was what was needed to balance size, and that was also what was needed to balance sort of the characteristics of the students. So that's a very tricky process, and we would need some help, and that's one thing I'd ask the committee for to approve if we were to do that. And so what would happen is we would work with a consultant, we'd identify the capacities of the 2 schools, we'd identify the locations of the students within the communities and their different needs, and then we would ask them to help us draw attendance maps that were as equitable as possible, so that both schools that were serving the same grades were serving similar populations.
I will say that that was one of the biggest problems that we had, because we didn't portion out the middle of the town. So the middle of the town runs right up Ridge Road, and there were people who lived on Ridge Road whose third grader went to Stony, and fourth grader went, or second grader went to somebody else, you know, because, and they expected that their children would be in those schools together.
I can't even imagine where that would seem so bizarre to me. I couldn't even imagine being in a district where we were splitting siblings attending school. If that happened in the past, then I would apologize to the parents for really a malfeasance on the part of the district for even making such a suggestion that you should send, you know, two siblings to two different schools if they could be attending the same school. But I don't know the specifics of it. She's saying that happened, and I don't know. I'm just saying that I couldn't imagine in this day and age that we would even consider splitting up siblings. That would be the last thing that I would do. I'd say those would be the kids that, you know, would be the first to be considered in the school. If there's a sibling in that school, then if they're in a flex zone where they might go to one school or another, that would be the determining factor for them going to that school. That would be first and foremost in my mind.
I have a question for John. So we're obviously talking about a lot of big changes. You know, in option one, there's kind of two big changes, right? All pre-K moves to Green Meadow, and then the 8th grade moves up to the high school. Then option two adds the additional big change of the grade schools getting rearranged in Wilbraham to neighborhood schools. You know, we're talking about all this along with changes to the regional agreement, which I think is a great way to do it. But in some ways, they're not really connected in that if the regional agreement gets modified to kind of wipe away the town lines, which is the way things are kind of going in the recommendations that came from the committee, is there any reason that even if our end product was option two, that all those changes would have to be done in the same year? Or, you know, would it be completely unfeasible for 1 year, move the 8th grade up to the high school, recover from that? There's going to be a lot of work in that. There's going to be unforeseen problems, as there always is with any big project. Get that all fixed, get our feet on the ground with that. And then the next step, let's move all of pre-K and fix Mile Tree to Green Meadows. And then after we recover from that and the unanticipated problems and so forth, then consider if we want to do the changes in the grade schools, you know, like now 3 years down the road. Or does it, because they seem like they're involving different buildings, different school populations, doesn't seem like they would cause a cost increase by stepping them out. If anything, it might spread. That's the other thing. We've got a budget shortfall. You know, we're asking the towns for lots of money for capital and operating expenses in a tough financial year. Spreading these changes out over a 3-year period or 2-year period if the committee decides to not really do the neighborhood school thing, which is obviously, we're going to be talking about that for a while, you know, might spread the costs out as well and make things more manageable for our leadership in the school district, since instead of moving all the pegs on the pegboard, move a couple, you know, anyway, if you could comment on that, John.
Sure. With the changes to the regional agreement that the planning committee is recommending, you wouldn't have to readdress the regional agreement to make all those changes. If you wanted to phase it in, you could phase it in. Be one change to the agreement and then a series of changes to the implementation. I think it would be important for everyone to know if that was the plan, what that was going to look like, because a part of this is getting the buy-in from the voters. And what I'm hearing is people want to know what the plan is. So the answer is they can be bifurcated, but they should also be laid out, I think, in order to get the changes to the regional agreement that would allow that to happen in a staged way.
that was probably one of the bigger weaknesses in the 5-year plan that we had come up with back in 2018, was there was this nebulous 2 through 4, right? So we had the first year, we're gonna move the 8th grade to the high school. This is, like, when we have these discussions, I mean, you realize, like, this is, we were talking about this 6 years ago, right? So this is not new ground. But the idea is that we would have the 8th grade move in the first year, and in years 2, 3, and 4, there would be a reconfiguration of the elementary schools, and then in year 5, we would try to move the 7th grade into the high school as well. That 2 to 4 year, that period, years 2 to year 4, there wasn't a lot of structure to it. And so you're absolutely right. Like, having a timeline for that, and a very specific timeline, so that people are able to conceptualize it, grasp it, and then sort of work it into what it is that they're planning on doing with their kids. And I think it's crucial. So, and I leave that to the administration's discretion. I think the biggest change, and I would hope that everybody on the committee can appreciate this, the biggest change in this agreement that we need to make sure that we impress upon the citizens of both towns is we need to remove the school committee out of a lot of this. I mean, we talked about the transfer requests earlier. There is no reason on God's green earth why 7 elected members of a committee should be making decisions on transfers for students for educational or any other reasons. So I think that is probably the most substantive change in the agreement, and you're right. If we can achieve that and have people understand that, we're all trying to achieve the same thing. And, there's different ways that you can visualize it, but I think the first thing is figuring out the direction of the district and understanding that we have to trust the leadership of our district. And then, most importantly, is have a common mission going forward, an agreement, and it's going to include not just us. We're going to have the boards of selectmen, we're going to have finance, we're going to have advisory. We have to have buy-in from everybody on this, because we can't have an 11th hour stab in the back from somebody who's been waiting in the wings and saying, nope, I don't like this and I'm not going to do this. That's going to kill this. So we have to make sure that what we do is everybody understands the advantages. There's going to be disadvantages. Change is painful. There's no question about it. If you haven't read the book, Who Moved My Cheese? It's a great book, all right? And it summarizes exactly what we have to go through in terms of reorganizing the district. But we've been struggling with this for 6 years. And based on the NESDEC data from the 2018, and their projections are pretty spot on, we're not going to see a significant decline in our population through the end of this decade. As a matter of fact, we're going to see a little bit of a bump. And so we need to be ready for that. And when I talk to some of the teachers in Stony Hill in particular, I mean, that school is packed. I mean, they are like sardines in there. We've got to find ways in which to relieve that pressure.
All right, thank you. So just to lay this all out for everybody, option 2 in Wilbraham would have 4 transitions for students. Okay? Option 1 would have 5 transitions for students. This is not a 6 years in one building scenario. Okay? This is a 4 years in one building scenario. So, I mean, with all this talking, with the pros and cons and everything laid down, at the end of the day, it's 5-4. I mean, it just seems that there's so many possible negatives to come up with just with one transition for peer students and for special ed students. The other thing which we really haven't talked about is moving the pre-K to Hamden. There's a lot of Wilbraham families saying, wait, so I got to drive my child to Hamden so they could have a half day of preschool. So I drive back, I let the dogs out, I let the dogs back in, I turn around, I have to go get my kid again. So, I mean, that is going to be an option. And then there's the 8th grade to the high school. I know we've looked at this, we have visited schools that have done this and talked with administration, with the students, and with the teachers from those. And I know our fears of putting the 8th grade in this beautiful school of Minnechaug have been allayed. I think there's still a lot of parents out there that I've been having, like as we all have, been having conversations with parents, and once you tell them, listen, we went there, this is what we found out, this is what we saw, this is what we heard, you don't have to worry about the 8th grade daughter, with the 12th grade senior potentially preying on them. No, it's a serious concern for a lot of parents, I think one parent said to me, I want my son to stay as young as long as possible, and I get that. I said, I changed that word from young to safe, and I think that's what we can give you. So, there is a lot more to this. And I guess the last thing I will ask is, so when are we actually going to vote on this?
Well, one of my asks is, for starters, if we could have a forum of some sort, whether a meeting, just hearing from staff and, but also, I mean, even after we make a recommendation, so I think we need to hear from more people, more stakeholders.
So have we even done this already? I mean, we've heard from a bunch of stakeholders, we had all kinds of meetings. Why are we waiting till now when we have this vote that has to come up? Why are we waiting so long? Okay, now we have to have more meetings, and why didn't we do that before? We had plenty of time before where we didn't have meetings and we didn't do stuff. Why weren't we talking to the students? Why weren't we talking to the union?
Make a suggestion. So, one of the goals of the school committee is for finance and operations to have 2 budget roundtables in the year. My suggestion would be if we can put together one of those and have sort of a roundtable discussion, which would include select board, which would include finance, which would include advisory, which would include capital planning, so that it would provide a forum of a discussion so that people would get a much more global view. I mean, we're just talking at the school committee level, but we also need to talk at the finance level. Like, what is the impact of these changes, on busing? What is the impact on the district financially? What kinds of savings would we see? And even going forward, I mean, we talk about the number of transitions, and Sean, I don't disagree. The number of transitions to me is secondary to the fact that if we go 4 to 5, if we go 2 grades in every school, we're still facing the same problems with the crowding. We're not allaying those problems. And then we've had this discussion before. If you took a handful of kids out of those schools and you moved them to Green Meadows, we could relieve the crowding. But the difference is now you're subjecting those kids to the inequity that we're trying to solve within elementary education in our district, and that is we have one school in which kids have 6 years of uninterrupted education in the same building. And so we're trying to get as close to that, I think, as possible. Because I look at that as I look at that as a huge advantage. And I think that, we really need to focus on that part of it. So, yeah, I mean, it's 5 transitions versus 4. I would argue that the transition from 3 to 4, that's a tough transition. And I would even argue the transition from 5 to 6. My thinking on middle school has really changed based on my reading, and and I know there's a good body of research out there that says this may not be the best thing for kids, because we're taking these kids who are in a socially awkward place, and now we are completely changing the structure of their lives. We're changing all of the people that they know, and more importantly, is we're changing their educational dynamic. We're going from a single classroom or 2 classrooms, and now we're going to schedules where they're moving around here and there. I've seen it. I have 2 kids now who are who are young adults. I have one that's going through middle school right now. So I've seen it for 3 different kids, And that's a tough time. That's a brutal transition. And so when we look at our middle school, and I don't think we need to go back too far in our data. We can look at our MCAS data in our own district. I mean, we see a pretty precipitous decline. I mean, we look at our kids and we look at their performance, if we use just the MCAS data, I mean, we see kids fall off 6th and 7th grade. That's a tough year. Achievement levels drop.
And Sean, to answer your question, I mean, there's a few reasons we didn't have the vote for tonight. We were sharing the recommendation of the planning committee to have further discussion. There's also information that has, that has come to light throughout the week. And I don't know about everybody else. I don't know, is everyone prepared to make the vote? I mean, I don't want to rush a vote just to say that we did the vote. I think that would be careless and reckless. And I mean, we hear from some residents that they were unaware of the options or the impact of it, and you hear, families talking about transportation. They're talking about what does the 2 through 5 model look like? What about the arts and music? What does that look like? My students in band, or there's going to be a different teacher. Is there enough staff? Does how is the staff the additional?
We've been talking about this for a year.
But
Actually,
Sean,
it's almost a year. I don't think it's reckless to say, when are we going to have a vote?
I said
now there's no
voting.
timetable for a vote. So are we going to make the town meeting? Are we going to have to have another special town meeting? And now we're going back
If
to
you
the
wouldn't
well
mind.
again to go and talk to the teachers and parents and stuff. Why have we done this before?
So we want to make sure that people have the information, and I mean, we've received the emails. I see it online, people saying, I didn't know. This information is not out there. Yes, we're talking about it. We come here every 2 weeks and we talk about it. If you're in the planning committee, Sean, we talk about this every single week. Some of us are talking about it almost every single day, but not everybody is aware of that or aware of the information, the implications, the impact. They're getting up to speed, and it's our job to share with everybody the information that we have to make sure that they can make the most informed decision. The other thing regarding transportation and having it for preschool in Hamden, one of the topics that came up was offering a full-day pre-K program. And I think, we did hear over the summer, during some of the summer listening sessions, that maybe it wouldn't be such a hardship if there was a full-day offering for parents that were having to, transport their child to Green Meadows. So, that's a discussion that we've had. I believe Gina shared information. We've seen numbers. So that is also a conversation. So there's a lot of different pieces to the puzzle. There's more information. I'm sure, families still have so many other questions. I know staff members have questions. I have questions, and I sit at this table every single week.
So, and I think one of the other things that we should keep in mind is that up until now, we've had sort of just, we've had sort of a whiteboard with a bunch of ideas on it. So now, as we, sort of focus down, we're getting a coalescing of ideas. So now we have more structure, and so it would be natural that you would have those questions. I do think a timeline is in order. I think we have to work backwards from this.
Yes, we have a timeline because springtime meeting, so I know for Hamden, the warrant closes on the 15th, so you have to have all of your information in by then. So we do have, we have only a certain amount of time. So,
Right.
so maybe we're not
to sit down there and meet with all the teachers, why didn't we do that in August? Why didn't we do it in September? Why didn't we do it in October? Why we didn't do it in November? To hear what are their plans. We had it narrowed down to 4 before we went into summer break last time. Right?
People have questions now, and people have feelings and opinions.
I get it.
Feedback
We
right
can
now.
keep on going
They
back
weren't
to it.
sharing
That's
it then
fine.
for
Right.
whatever reason. But now it's engaged. We're getting closer to
Okay.
the fact of the matter is.
I'm not saying keep it away from the people. I'm not saying let's rush to a vote. I'm saying that we were on a certain time frame, and that now suddenly it seems like, well, we didn't do it. So now we're not shooting for the 25-26 school year. I guess we're shooting for the 26-27 school year?
I think we're still on timeline. However, we do have to bring something else up. But no, I think we're still on track for, I don't see us blowing this timeline. I think that we're still on track. It's February 1st. And I think if we have to add an additional meeting next
pay
week.
for another meeting, or are we gonna, okay.
No, springtime meeting, we can have additional meetings and we can vote, or we can arrange, some of these additional conversations that we're talking about.
What about with the teachers and more listening sessions with the parents?
So,
Which I think is great,
I'd like
but
to
when
suggest,
do we do this?
we're not gonna, doesn't look like we're doing a vote tonight. perhaps a good move would be to pick a school committee date tonight that we're gonna vote, and maybe different days might be good to vote for the kind of educational vision at one school committee meeting, and then 2 weeks later, the box checking for the regional agreement. And then when we pick those dates, you know, let's do everything we can to send information out to the community that this is when it's happening. Heck, take out an ad in the Wilbraham Times with the different things, and have, you know, maybe the Wednesday night before the first of those school committee meetings, book the auditorium or something where, you know, we're gonna be there and just, you know, people be able to speak their minds, not that we're gonna discuss, like just a public comment session, not a formal public meeting of the school committee, but we're there, people can make their comments and discuss.
Mike, I totally agree with you, right? So then let's not push the vote then. If we still need to get out to the community, then let's push the vote off for another year. Then let's have those meetings, or we'll push it off to the fall. Why are we gonna rush in the next 2 weeks to go and have all these conversations? If we didn't do our job in the past year, which it sounds like everyone here is saying we didn't do our job, that we need to go, we need to talk to the community, we need to answer their questions, and we need to get with the teachers and just get on the same page. Because I thought we had done all that, but if we haven't, which it sounds like we didn't, then let's do it, and let's do it right, let's not rush the vote, and let's push off any change until after we have everyone on the same page.
You did do it, Sean, and I watched you guys do it. I know you did it. But some people have spoken up that I think a little tiny bit of misinformation can cause a great deal of panic in the community. And I think the best way to battle, can we, just announce a little bit more publicly when the vote is going to be, so everybody knows, and there's not, a bunch of emails going out last minute the night of the school committee meeting. People know it's coming a couple weeks ahead of time at least, and they have their opportunity to reach out and have, because I think a lot of times, they just have questions that need to be answered so that they feel comfortable with the decisions that, when we talk about them making a decision, ultimately, I mean, what's so hard about this is ultimately the decision is going to fall on our shoulders. We're the elected representatives of the town.
That's the job.
We are going to have a vote. We're going to have to make the decision, and we're going to make the best decision we can. And no matter what we end up deciding, there are going to be people unhappy, and there are going to be people very happy. And hopefully, there's going to be a major move forward for the positive for the education and for the kids in the school district, which is what everybody's goal is.
Amen.
But it's the challenge. So I guess I'd like to make a motion that we agree on a date for the votes tonight.
So before we ask
Second
that,
for that?
Second.
Second discussion, Bill?
yeah, all right, I'll add it into the discussion. So I think the first thing we need to do is actually figure out our timeline, right? So these are not budgetary changes. What is the drop dead date in which we have to submit articles for the warrant?
I'm going to call
You
on
defer
Don
to
Davenport.
Mr. Davenport, 15th, right?
For the guy who's going to have to stand up and defend whatever you do, March 15th is our warrant deadline.
Okay. But that's for the town of Hamden, or that's for both?
For the town of Hamden.
Okay. Now, that's, so March 15th. So we have a month, we have 6 weeks.
Okay, is your meeting happening in May?
Our meeting is going to be in May, yes.
Okay, I have heard some talk that the Wilbraham town meeting might occur in April. So if it occurs in April, yeah.
They can't find a date.
They've
They
been
can't
having a
find a
hard
date.
time with the date. It might get moved up to April, but as far as I last heard, they actually don't have a date for the Wilbraham Town
Right.
meeting, which means we don't have a drop-dead deadline for the warrants for that meeting.
So why don't we just push it off until the fall, right? And have no, I'm serious, push the vote off in the fall. Let's really get it into the community. Let's have some big meetings where everyone can come and speak and be heard, and they can hear what's going on, and they can get all their question answers like we were supposed to do this past year. Let's do it right, and if we can do it in the fall, great. If not, we got to do it in the spring of next year.
Did do it right, and whenever we make the decision for some period of time after the decision, we're going to have to go out in the community and help advocate for the decision that was made and answer people's questions as well as part of that. I mean, so.
The biggest problem I see with that is that all we're doing is kicking the can down the road. We're dealing with the middle school for another year.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think we do what we can in the time that we have available. We use March 15th as our drop dead date. Wilbraham, we're just going to have to let them know, like, this is, you're going to have to make adjustments to this. We can't stop our business because Wilbraham can't find a date for council to actually be present at town meeting. So I think we have 6 weeks. If anybody is a student of school committee affairs and what happened in regionalization of this district back in 1993, it was done in less than 6 months.
6 months.
Right? So it can be done. All right, and I think we have to have a can-do attitude, but I would use that as the drop-dead date. If we want to vote before then, I think that's absolutely fine, but I think, the idea of having public forums is a great idea. Get people to have their questions answered, to allay their fears and understand that what we're doing is making decisions based on what we feel is the most educationally prudent thing for the students in our district.
I just say, as long as before we vote, and I'm not for kicking it way down the road either, and I agree with just what everybody said tonight, that it would be to almost have like when you're looking at a question on the ballot, saying this side is saying this is the reason, you got to lay it out simply. Here's our 2 choices, which I think is a lot. We've made progress because you're not 4 choices, you have 2 choices. And here's the differences. 5 transitions, 4 transitions. This is the bus cost, this is not the bus cost, this is sports. Lay out all the different issues, the pros on one side, the negatives, and then you can kind of understand it. Because even myself, I'm sitting here listening to different people. I haven't been I'm not in the subcommittee, so I haven't really heard all those arguments. So even now, just looking at it, I'm trying on my own to try to figure out what the different arguments are. But I love to hear point counterpoint. Here's somebody says do it this way, here's somebody do it that way, listen to the debate, and then put the best foot forward, based on the pluses and minuses of both sides. And if we do that before we take our vote, it would be very helpful to probably everybody around, where you really get all the questions answered, and lay out the pluses and minuses of every little detail, and you can vote on it. We're not doing our job.
I'm very happy you just said 2 choices, because one of the things I was wondering, as someone who I imagine might be involved in helping to craft communications to the community, is, are we down to 2 choices now? We've only been talking about 2. This may be sort of an opportunity for almost a ranked choice voting of the choices, because in the early summer, we polled people on all 4, and, now the support for option 3 and option 4 is going to end up in option 1 or option 2. If that is where people are maybe crafting it as, these are the 2 choices we're looking at, might help to really crystallize the discussion.
I think the only reason we're talking 2 choices was because there was a 3-to-1 vote in the planning committee, and it was just over option 1 and option 2. Option 3 and option 4, I don't believe got any votes.
So we can discuss amongst our committee right now.
It'd be for limiting it to 2.
Everyone's comfortable limiting to 2 options?
Do we need
And those 2
to
options?
make a motion and vote on that it's going to be 1 or 2? No, we just need to kind of feel that our
consensus.
gestalt is, I agree it's going to be 1 or 2.
I agree.
Yep.
Yep.
Go.
Yeah, and the most substantive thing that we need to do, again, is looking at, going back to that first change in the regional agreement, right? That's the linchpin of this. As long as we can get that language passed, everything else is it's sort of filling. Like, that change will allow the administration to basically be able to reconfigure our schools. And who knows, it may not stay that way, but it's not written in the regional agreement that way. That's the configuration that we're going to. But who knows, in 5 years there might be a discussion to do something different. But at least the change to the regional agreement gives us the flexibility to do that without having to go back to the towns to change the agreement again.
And also, it's important to know, we were talking in the planning committee, is the settlement agreement for the lawsuit did put into writing that there will always be a school in Hamden. You know, maybe that's something that we want to put language inside this agreement that says there will always be a school in Hamden, there will always be a school in Wilbraham, something like that. But then again, that would tie us up again if, say, I win the lottery and I'm going to build an education complex on this thing here where I have all the elementary school kids come into this new great complex. Or that, I'm telling, I'm going to give the money to the district. If Mrs. Kennedy lets me, if I win the lottery, it's all coming here.
Publicly.
So we have a lot of families traveling in February for school vacation. We have a lot of families traveling in April for school vacation.
Has to be done in March.
It has to be,
For this spring.
so I think probably the March 7th school committee meeting is the last one that we can vote.
But we're able to put a date on the calendar. We don't have to tie it to a school committee meeting. I mean, we've done it before when we have different topics that are coming up. We can add a meeting, we can adjust our schedule.
Totally cool with that.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, but as, we know it's got to be done by March 15th for Hamden, theoretically, if it's going to be for Springtown meetings. And we don't have to say this too loud, but we expect both towns are going to have a fall town meeting. So if we do totally fall on our faces and not get it done, there might be a backup to save the timeline. But March, we do have a school committee on March 7th. We could do it then. I'm post-call. I'll be available all afternoon. I'm happy to hang out in the high school parking lot if people want to come to chat. Is there, or once school's dismissed, in the school,
Going back to what I was talking about before, would there be any interest in, because we do have the two budget roundtables that we're supposed to look at. We're supposed to have those by the end of the year. So would it be feasible, I know it's a little bit late to get those invitations out, but maybe sometime right after the February break, if we can have a roundtable meeting, because I think it's important in public perception that we have, that we have the select board members of both towns, and we have representatives from finance and advisory. So that
Future agenda items, so it's to discuss for tonight.
Yeah.
Pick a date, for that.
And I think that would be an excellent opportunity, because you would have the ability to, if people come in and they have questions specifically about the financial implications, we will at least have, we'll at least have people from advisory and finance. And it would satisfy at least one of the meetings for the goals for the school committee with regards to finance and operations. Just a thought.
where does that leave us with voting on March 7th?
I would still propose that we set the vote for March 7th. That would give us a week to make sure that the changes are correct. Now, the other question that I asked, which is what I was talking about working backwards on the deadline, is how much time does DESE need to actually approve these changes? And
Well, I don't think that it'll take long for them to turn this around because we've been working with them all along.
okay,
Remember, we're building in a year of implementation planning anyways.
Yeah.
So if this were approved in the spring of '24, they could have up to 12 months to approve it and we would still be ready to go.
okay. Just so long as we didn't get stuck and all of a sudden they're like, nope, we don't approve, you can't do it. So,
We could also alternatively vote on different days. We could vote on the changes to the regional agreement on the February 15th school committee meeting, which might be less of a discussion and a more straightforward vote, and then that would be ready to go to DESE, right?
So I guess I'll bring up, I think that it would be really helpful for that vote to be connected to the tri-board meeting that Dr. Bontempi is talking about, because I'll talk about the one piece of the proposed agreement that the planning committee wasn't able to make decisions about, and that has to do with what the alternate method gets attached to. You know, the alternate method is how you deal with your operating costs. The other part of that section, which is about assessment, has to do with capital costs. And capital issues haven't been worked out yet, and I think both towns will likely want to participate in the discussion of how the capital costs get worked out.
And the other thing regarding the warrant, so it's the date the warrant's closed, so they're not accepting any additional articles at that time. It doesn't mean that our language has to be perfected by March 15th.
Oh, cool.
And I know that we are, regardless of whenever they have the meeting for Wilbraham, I know we have a placeholder on
And
there.
the changes, I believe the changes to the warrant, to the exact language is like 2 weeks before. I think it's 14 days before the town meeting, the verbiage has to be, that has to be solidified.
And, you know, I had some conversations with Nick about this. I don't think the warrant is going to be a replication of the regional agreement. I think it'll be some language along the lines of whether or not to approve a change in the regional agreement, and the change will be an appendix or something like that. So, you know, we don't have to have every aspect of the agreement worked out before we submit a motion, in my opinion.
So I know also for him, then we just have to have the language done before their advisory hearing. So the fact that we'll have a placeholder on each warrant is helpful, and I think we are.
And I would stress that, you know, if I can beat a dead horse a little bit more, I mean, this is monumental. That if we can affect that change to the regional agreement, that will just, it'll catapult us into the next decade as far as being able to administer education, because it's really, that regional agreement, and I do not denigrate the people that crafted it for 6 months' work. It's incredible, and it's lasted for, 30 years. Great job. But education has changed. The needs of the towns have changed. The financial positions of the district have changed. And so this will give us the opportunity for hopefully the next 30 years to be able to administer education in the best way we see fit.
So, but just to put this out there, if we decide on the 7th of March, Mrs. Kennedy's birthday, it doesn't matter anything that comes after this, right? I mean, if we decide and we vote this on the 7th, then we can put it in the warrants. Well, it doesn't matter about language changing. We have plenty of time to put the language together. We can put the language together now. We just do 2 different versions. Which one do we send in? So it's my thing is if members of this committee don't feel that we've done enough work already, what is the work that we're going to do over the next month, or a month and a half, or a month and a week, like I said, next month? What is that work that is going to be enough for members of this committee to think that, okay, yes, we've dotted our I's, we've crossed our T's, we've talked to enough people, we are now ready to vote?
I don't believe it was any member from this committee that did not believe that we fulfilled our obligation or did our due diligence or did our job. I think it's just a matter of now sharing the information with the public. I'm saying that I've heard and I've seen and I've read that people don't know.
Right.
And
So that starts
they
after
need to
the
know.
7th, correct? Is when we start talking to the community about what decisions.
Conversations are saying this is
It
helpful.
can start now. Like I said, if you do a public forum, and like I said, the biggest piece of this is making sure that you have buy-in from your other town boards, because we need to present a united front to people to understand that this is in the best education, and the people that have been elected to these positions do agree that, this is where the direction that we need to go in. So, and
So
I
you're
don't
really thinking like pushing this out until the fall?
I know, because
Once
we're
we've
still,
decided, we can decide now on March 7th, and then we have that time to go and show the community why this is the best option.
but what are we gonna do with the middle school? What are we gonna do? I mean, we're already, we don't even have a library. We've divided up into classrooms. I mean, we're trying to affect change.
Next year, anyway, the middle school is going to be the middle school under the old system. The middle school is not going to change until 2025.
I think it helps with planning, having a decision made and voting, whether we know it's happening, then the administration can do what they need to do. Moves can possibly begin to happen, before, so we can just get ahead of things. And I think that everyone's going to need the time to plan and to work on things. There's a lot to do. And we're not doing that work.
And I don't think
Everyone else is.
I don't think you're ever going to get to the point where you're not going to have people coming forward saying, I didn't know. I mean, you could drag this out. And I'll tell you what, I mean, the middle school task force started in, I think, 2012. And in 2016, when I first started on this committee, there were still people who were coming forward and saying, I had no idea you guys were talking about this.
Okay, so we had 2 dates on the table. So 7th
7th for the vote?
for the vote.
Right now, you should ask for a bathroom break.
Yeah.
All right. We'll have to after this.
We're not
It's not
voting,
a vote.
there's no voting, we're just having, just
Oh.
talking, we have 2 dates,
Schedule
yeah.
I thought, no, it was a motion and seconded.
Well, I
It's not on the agenda, so we can't vote.
that we would commit to deciding on the date.
Oh, okay.
We did it, so I think I'm comfortable withdrawing my motion.
Once it's been seconded, it has to be voted on or tabled.
Well, if you want to follow through, all those in favor of the motion to set a date, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Here we go, satisfied the motion. Now, March 7th?
So we'll do March 7th
Yes.
for the vote.
And what about a date for roundtable?
We'll talk about that at the subcommittee. I don't think we're going to do 2. I think we've decided that we're going to do probably 1. And if we're going to change it to be 1 for this, we'll have to refine that at the subcommittee meeting, which I believe has just been.
Seeing
Yeah.
if too many left. We're hoping for Wednesday. Is that the- yeah. Well, that was what we proposed. Wednesday, right. So,
Can we take a 5-minute recess just for biological?
yes.
Thank you.
Too many of us go to the restroom, it would be a violation of public. Right?
Why don't you let me take a look at the school calendars? Best to try to avoid big things. If possible. But there's so many things. Right?
With the popcorn or the... Oh, yes, those little triangles, yeah, try that. Hey, how are you?
Snacks.
It's snack time, you know?
That's incredible.
Assume this is just a break, right?
Yes. I could have waited until a bit.
I guess that's part of the bio,
Thank you.
putting some calories in.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about it. So you have, so the modification.
Have somebody represent one side, somebody represent the other side.
How does your interview go?
It's just foolish.
That's what I get disappointed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Each document open.
Then you can be pleasantly surprised.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say that we wanted to do, let's say that you had a form. You have a standardized form. If you have a standardized form, you can then take that standardized form, upload that form into Good Notes, you can modify it. You can send a modified, it's just a modified PDF. You can send it to whoever. And then,
I don't need good enough for that. I can write it.
okay,
But I have to make sure that everything is good because all the original files are shared equally. Right. So if I start scribbling on them, everybody who goes to open it is going to see my scribbles. That makes sense. Like my
so,
that's creative.
that when the lawsuit. You know, you mentioned the whole thing.
Well, let's put an ad in the Yes, oh.
Blow it up.
I was trying to. I was trying to tell her. The lawsuit, so she started.
Okay, so we are going to begin. So we are going to move on to Finance and Operations Subcommittee. Sean.
Yeah, we had a first look at some of the numbers from Aaron. I think I'll turn it over to you,
Sure.
Mr. Osborne, and
Sure.
you can help us take a look at these.
Sure thing.
In your packets, you actually have, I guess, what we would call version 2.0 of the budget. So we shared an initial pass. John and I have had some conversations since, and we've been able to find some savings. I'm going to direct you all first to this sheet. This is, where we stand on the budget as a whole. Is everybody there? Sorry.
Is that the budget drivers sheet?
No, it's got a green at the top. It's the budget. Everything's two-sided in there, so it might be the back.
It's behind that.
Sure. So this is similar to something I shared last year. Has everything by cost center. So these are all of our major cost centers: district-wide, athletics, student services, transportation. With the changes from 24 to 25 with percent increases. A couple things I'd like to point out. District-wide support includes Chromebooks for one-to-one programming. That has not been budgeted before. And we had, I had previously been including that in our capital planning document. And for the past couple of years, we've been paying it with ESSER funds, which we no longer have. So that needs to be in the budget. There's a couple $100,000 of that. Additionally, there's the additional cost of vocational programming. So we have now allowed 9th graders to attend LPVEC for the first exploratory year. So that has increased that amount there.
Is the vocational included in the district-wide support?
Yes, that's district-wide. That's all of that is inclusive of district-wide right now. John and I are going to talk about moving that because that was a strategic initiative. We are going to look to move that in the next iteration, version 3.0, into strategic plan support. It's really just a matter of how to do that. You'll see there's a lot of movement between the schools. There have been some position shifts from Green Meadows to Wilbraham Middle School as a result of the number of middle school students there, so there have been some added staff. There was a shift from Green Meadows to Sewell Road in a program as well. John and I, as part of working on version 2.0 of this budget, have also worked with Sharon Moberg, talking about how the likely loss of middle school at Green Meadows is going to impact the budget there. So we've been able to sort of eliminate some positions that are effectively vacant at this time. So, we don't anticipate staff cuts there. TWB, these are some initial items that we've pulled out, planning for the sort of move out of TWB. We will have some additional savings as well. Gina and I are in discussions about when that transition program moves to Minnechaug, how that will impact the budget. So there will be some savings there.
Can I just clarify, because I'm not sure we've discussed this yet? We're talking about moving the transition program from TWB even before we have a change in the regional agreement or any of the other things, because that's not tied to the regional agreement and allow us to realize some savings in the next year's budget.
Yes, thank you. I forgot we hadn't discussed that yet.
I just have a question. Will TWB still be running after-school programs, sports, that kind of thing?
What after-school programs?
I'm talking about sports or basketball.
So recreation department?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
it'll still be open?
Yes, that's still Hamden'sville. Yep. So that gets us to an overall budget increase of 3.2%, significantly below where we were last year. Last year we did have more offsets to put forward, and you'll see that coming down. One of our biggest challenges is that ESSER ends, and we have used ESSER to help support the budget, not just in Chromebooks, but in general budget support. We had a lot on ESSER. Some of the staff we had on ESSER are winding down, so sort of normal attrition has cleared sort of those ESSER positions. but we did have $350,000 of additional ESSER to help support the budget, as did many districts. If you read the news, you'll see Northampton and Amherst are facing some pretty dire budget challenges. Ours are not quite as severe, but we definitely have some challenges. Going down the list, we do anticipate receiving more circuit breaker than we budgeted for last year, so that will help us out. John and I are still talking a little bit about maybe even being able to bump that number up. Gina gave us some numbers earlier today that indicate we may be able to maybe put another 100,000 into that, so there's some hope there. Most of the other items remain very similar. We did have a scare on Title I, but we do believe we will be getting the full Title I grant. Any questions on sort of that sheet? Don't want to, fair enough, okay. The next page I'm not going to dwell on because I've talked about some of these items, but this is the next, I'm sorry, because you and I have them in different order. This is the budget drivers sheet. These are the major items that are driving sort of the increases to the budget. You will see salaries, our increase in salaries at only $482,000 right now, and that is because of some of the moves we've made as it relates to Green Meadows and middle school. Down below, sort of the top levels there, you'll see where our changes in salaries happened. So that's a subset of what's above. And then I also broke out utilities by school just so you could see how that plays out. The utilities in the aggregate are in the grid above. Does that make kind of sense to everyone? Don't want to, okay. Then everything then flows to the infamous colored sheet that goes to the towns. It's in many colors. I didn't choose them, I inherited them. I don't want to dwell too much on Chapter 70, I think as you know, is pretty flat. So we anticipate getting, 2/3 of 1% increase in Chapter 70. That is the $30 per student minimum that the state typically gives. We're in a hold harmless provision where we will never receive less than we received in the prior year, and then the state typically ups that by $30 per student. So one of the things we've talked about down below in the orange section, transportation reimbursement. We're expecting a little bit more this year than last year. We did get more than we budgeted last year. I think you'll recall when the state put the budget out at the beginning, they used a lower percentage than what was anticipated. We talked to Desi then about it. This year, if you look at the cherry sheets, I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, you will see the lower amount is once again in the governor's budget section. That is the same dynamic. I expect we'll get a similar amount. So they seem to be holding to the 90%, and I don't have any reason to believe they won't do that. So I am budgeting for the higher amount. Our E&D, as you'll recall, the past couple of years, we stepped up our E&D spending dramatically. So 2 years ago, we brought it up from about $675,000 to $950,000 to support the budget. This year, we are putting $1,050,000. That has drained our E&D by about $2 million. We've put a little bit more money back in this past year, but that leaves us at $760,000. I'm putting all $763,000 into the budget this year to support that. The challenge is that becomes a pretty significant reduction in our available E&D to put forward. So moving to page 2 are where we stand with assessments as of version 2.0. I will give you line numbers to make it a little easier. Down below, line 28 gives you the preliminary Hamden assessment, which represents a 4.36% increase at this time. Line 34 shows Wilbraham's preliminary assessment at 5.63%, and then down below, line 40, you can see the combined of 5.86. So we're still definitely above what I think the towns are going to want to see. This is only version 2.0. We will continue to pick away. As I said, Gina and I have some conversations about TWB. John and I have some conversations about circuit breaker and some other items. And we're hoping that as we get back to the next Budget and Finance Subcommittee meeting, we will give them version 3.0.
And just as a refresher to me, how much money in capital for Minichog are we asking for on top of this?
Yep, right now down at the bottom, right now we're looking at predominantly the wireless access points. That is 200 and right now we're estimating at $225,000. Bill is working with the consultant, the capital needs assessment consultant on IT to sort of validate those numbers.
Okay.
And if those change, we'll, you know, I'm guessing they won't change downward if they change.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Any questions?
Just a quick question on the E&D. So what do we have available right now?
Exactly 763,000.
So you're spending all of that's going into the budget?
We don't have much choice.
Okay.
Aaron, can you do me a favor in that, as we move forward, can you give them version 1.1, 1.2, you know, just so that, because I'm trying to keep all the versions and see what happens.
But like version 1, yeah.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah, so this, you know, so we have the one that you gave us at the meeting is version 1.
Yeah.
This would be version 1.2. And that way, just so that when we're all looking on it, making sure we're looking at the right versions, I think that'll be helpful.
Fair enough. I'll try to remember
The
that.
corrected version of the one from the meeting.
Right.
The actual one for the meeting.
Okay.
The corrected version.
Yeah.
That would be 1.11, or 1.01, or I don't know what.
Actually, Aaron, if you just put the date on it,
We'll do it by,
probably the easiest thing to do. Date
Bill,
and time.
that is just too logical. All right, so the date would work too.
I can do that. That works.
Sean, do you have anything else to add?
No, this is what we're getting into, and I do have to say, I'm really happy, the representatives that we have from Hamden and from Wilbraham, they are rolling up their sleeves, they're in it with us, and, you know, I have a really good feeling about how the meetings have been going. Do you agree?
I agree.
Yes, you too? Yeah, excellent.
Okay.
No, we're
Do
gonna
we
keep
have
chugging
a-
away at it.
Do we have a date for another meeting, or not yet?
I thought we had another day. Aaron, didn't we have another date and then we chose potentially doing one today?
If you have a date, I realize John is on the 19th, and that's President's Day.
But then you're going to be...
Today was canceled because there was really no reason to meet. The numbers didn't really change that much. So, but I thought I'll work with Aaron on that, and we'll get something out to everybody.
26th, maybe?
One on the 19th, and then you could do it on the 26th.
We do the 12th.
Okay, we can figure that out at a later time, if that's okay.
Yeah, I thought the 12th we couldn't do it for a certain reason. Yeah, we'll get to it.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we will move on to Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative. Lisa?
We already talked about busing, so I'm not going to go over that. The collaborative, CTEC, is going to be having an open house on February 6th. And new to fall 2024, their criminal justice program is going to be starting. And then something that I thought was interesting was they talked about their different programs, and I thought it was interesting that their special education programming is down in enrollment. So I just particularly thought that was interesting, being an educator, and that is all I have.
Lisa, so when we had, what was the name of the gentleman who came in from Lower Pioneer Valley?
Alvin Morton.
Alvin, right?
Mhm.
When, Dr. Morton, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah, when Dr. Morton came in and was talking about the busing issue, at the end, he did mention that his people did talk with the manufacturer, and they did, you know, send them to a direction of which they did inspect the vehicles for. Just reach out to him, like, he can talk to us about that. He can say, these were the conversations that we had, it's nothing that's in writing, we don't have a definitive, but these were the talks of what it was, and we have inspected all those vehicles. I didn't think he had to hold those cards so close to the vest. I mean, those were our kids that were on that bus, and it was in our town, so, I don't know if you could just relay that information, that'd be great. Thank you.
Great. We will move on. There's nothing on the negotiation subcommittee, so we'll move on to the policy subcommittee.
All right, policy subcommittee. So, as per previous discussions, please note, if you look on your agenda, there's a policy that I'm not going to read today that's listed there to be read, the BBBE, which is the sixth one down. All right. So, third reading of the following policies. AC, non-discrimination. ACR, non-discrimination policy, including harassment and retaliation. BA, school committee operational goals. BBAA, school committee member authority. BBBC, school committee member resignation. BDFA, school councils. This was the third reading, so I'm looking at a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We now have the following policies for second reading. BG, school committee policy development. BGC, policy revision and review.
Wait, one quick one. Can't we just change BBBE? Can't we just change that language and it stays, or you have to go back to the policy and change the language?
We're gonna change, John is gonna provide an edit of changed language,
Yeah.
which we're gonna review and potentially approve at the next policy subcommittee meeting, and then at the next school committee meeting, it will get its third reading.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And then potentially be up for approval.
Thank you.
Are there changes between each reading, or second and third reading?
In the case of that policy, there will be, but there has not been for the most part. Once again, it's second reading, where did I get to? BGC, policy revision and review. BHE, use of electronic messaging by school committee members. BIVA, school committee conferences, conventions, and workshops. BJ, school committee legislative program. Continuing on, Section C, policies for second reading. CA, administration goals. CB, school superintendent. CBD, superintendent's contract. CBI, evaluation of the superintendent. CCB, staff relations. CE, administrative councils, cabinets, and committees. CH, policy implementation. CHCA, approval of handbooks and directives. CM, school district annual report. The following policies from Section D are up for first reading today. DJ purchasing for updating. DJE bidding requirements for removal. Thank you. I think our next meeting for the policy subcommittee is going to be on February 13th.
Thank you, Lisa.
And Lisa Murray will be stepping in as her alternate duties.
Thank you. All right, technology subcommittee, Joe.
I could not make it to the last meeting, so I will turn it over to Sean, who ran the meeting.
Yeah, we just basically continued the conversations that we were having about the wireless access points and the cameras. And we got some more information regarding more concrete numbers and stuff, and we're moving forward with that. Rich, did you have anything else you'd like to add?
Nope. He's
he's not the best color man in sports for nothing.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Questions or discussion?
I think the only thing is that, the,
So I would like to just pull out the memo of the,
yeah,
of
Donation.
the donation. And we can do that separately. if that's
yeah.
fine. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. So we did receive a donation. So Minnetonka Regional High School Athletics are looking for approval for a donation to replace the current scoreboard on Falcon Field. This donation is part of the original plan to add turf and replace the scoreboard, ticket booth, concession stand, storage shed, and bleachers. The scoreboard, valued at $20,000, has been donated with installment included by an anonymous donor to the athletics program.
Make a motion to accept the $20,000 anonymous donation for the Minnetonka Regional High School Falcons scoreboard.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Can't wait to see the one now.
I know that it's an anonymous donation. That's a beautiful thing, but I think we should put a letter to Anonymous thanking them, and hopefully we can get that to them.
I think the whole point of anonymous defeats that purpose.
No, we can say thank you. We don't know who you are, but thank you.
Oh,
I think that's important.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to the superintendent's update.
Okay.
So, given the late hour, I don't want to keep us here, but I do want to bring to your attention that we are bringing another element of the strategic plan to fruition tonight. The plan asks us to analyze and evaluate the current pre-K opportunities and programming, and that's also come in the context of the planning committee. In fact, it's also come up tonight in our discussions, where we've discussed the full-day option, at least for 4-year-olds. So we now have a more detailed financial analysis of what that would cost, and I will turn the microphone over to Aaron to share his analysis.
Sure thing. So I worked with Gina Roy to sit down and talk through what, imagining if we were to start it next year. Realistically, it may not, but the proposal would be to have full-day pre-K available to 4-year-olds who were interested on a space-available basis. So looking at sort of the classrooms we have, the dynamics, the number of 4-year-olds that we would expect to have next year. We would expect to have 56 eligible 4-year-olds with IEPs, and we'd expect 24 of those, just based on interest, opting for full-day pre-K. So this would be result in a total of 7 classrooms versus the current 4 budgeted classrooms. It would add 3 classrooms. You'll recall we also have added a 0.5 classroom this year, but that wouldn't necessarily be carried over based looking at the numbers. So this would also allow for those 24 peer partners to pay full-day tuition, right? So we would have additional tuition come in based on that. So that was one of the items when I provided the reconfiguration cost. I didn't figure in the tuition, and it was very ballpark numbers. Quite honestly, the numbers that Gina and I came up with were very much the same by chance in terms of what it would look like. So really the only difference would be taking out the tuition offset. So we would receive roughly $79,200 in pre-K tuition for those peer partners. If you look at the back page of the memo, it has the cost summary. So we'd be looking to add 3 pre-K teachers plus benefits at a cost of estimate of $285,000, 6 pre-K paraprofessionals with benefits at an expected cost of $210,000. There would be ongoing materials and supplies costs estimated at $10,000. And then there would be a one-time cost. We'd estimate about $50,000 for furniture, furnishings, books, supplies, and things like that, more permanent supplies for that class, for those classrooms. So in total, we'd expect the first year costs to be $475,800. And then going forward, those one-time costs would go away. So the total cost would be $425,800 a year.
That's $350,000. That's not baked into the budget, right?
That's not within the budget right now.
So
no.
that's a $350,000 a year expense for the district.
That's a
Roughly.
$425,000, yeah.
Minus the tuition.
No, that's including the tuition.
That's including the
Yeah,
tuition.
yeah. So
Wow.
it's not insignificant. The intent was not necessary, it would probably be done as part of the reconfiguration if it's something we were to do. So we could re-examine it next year, you know, numbers and where we are from a budget perspective. Maybe things will change, the money tree out back will bloom. I don't know, but you know, this is, it is part of the strategic plan. I know it's come up a couple times in conversations with people. So, you know, we wanted to make sure we were true to, you know, kind of our promises of giving a sharpened pencil.
Well, I do like the idea of a full day pre-K program, no question about it. I mean, to me, that's cost prohibitive. I mean, we're talking a significant amount of money, which frankly, we just don't have.
Yeah.
I mean, we're down in bubble.
So just to clarify, we're not asking for approval.
No.
We're just providing the information so that the committee has it as we move forward with implementation of the strategic plan.
Appreciate it.
The plan actually just asked, would you take a look at it and see what it'll be? So this is our attempt to do that. And then now we know. So thank you. That's right. Another thing for Sean's Lottery.
Stranger things.
Okay. So then I'd like to close the meeting with a spotlight on the arts. In late summer, we began working with Reminder Publications, the Springfield Thunderbirds, and other collaborative districts on a design and ad contest that provided our elementary students with an authentic learning experience in graphic design. The project connected our students with local businesses in the context of a challenge to design an ad that would represent their products and services. More than 55 classes participated, producing more than 1,000 works of art. And we had many winners from Sewell Road and Green Meadows. The winners' works were published in an insert to the January 8th reminder and are also on display at the businesses that the ads were created for. So while you view these winning entries, I'd like you to thank our elementary art teachers, Julia Max and Allison Smith, for supporting our students through this process. It was a great day for me because I got to go and
Wait, before you move, can you go
the
back
winners.
there? It's my favorite part of the whole thing where you have the competitors. Go back to Ken's Automotive. Right, it's the competitors are a sad wrench and Ken's is a happy wrench. So a happy wrench is a wonderful thing. I just make that very clear. That made me laugh very hard. I thought it was brilliant.
I happen to like the Friendlies one. Well, with these ads, we're going to make a comeback.
Know that they
Yes, but they paid for it.
And I love on the last one, if you look, the before and after, the broken lamp, and then now it's not broken anymore. On the bottom, that is just brilliant. It's electrifying.
Oh, that's great.
So thanks for sharing that with me, and that's my report.
Okay, is there anything that anyone would like to add to?
I'm sorry. There is one more thing that I forgot to do, which is enrollment. Enrollment for February was 2,864, an increase of 4 students from last month. One thing I would point out is that, because it connects to something that was said earlier tonight, is that first gray line at the top is Mile Tree. And if you look, it's been bumping up. In fact, this is the highest enrollment they have. So if you carry that forward, that is the beginning of the bump of increase in population.
Which we know is that.
Right. Those projections have been pretty right on. They've been
Eerily, right?
Yeah.
Can I motion to adjourn?
We actually have executive session.
So pursuant
Motion
to
to go to executive session.
Okay.
Second?
Yes.
I have to read my little statement.
Oh.
Sorry. We do have the need for executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, C, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigations, including Kevin Edward Landers, individually and on behalf of all other persons similarly situated, versus Hampton-Wilbraham Regional School District, Hamden County Superior Court, case number 237-9C-00338, et al. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
And we're going to adjourn from executive session.
So moved.
Perfect, okay. Bill. Cheryl. Sean.
Aye.
Lisa.
Aye.
Rich.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
And myself, aye. We are now moved to executive session, 9:21.
Please remember to sign warrants.
Oh, shoot, yeah.